дівченьку у зеленому саду. Чи не вийде дівчинонька рано вранці по ладу? Маруся, раз, два, три, калина чорнявая дівчина саду ягоди рвала. Маруся, раз, два, три, калина чорнявая дівчина саду ягоди рвала. Вийшла дівчинонька рано вранці воду брать, а за нею козаченько веде коня напувать. Маруся, раз, два, три, калина чорнявая дівчина саду ягоди рвала. Маруся, раз, два, три, калина чорнявая дівчина саду ягоди рвала.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар. Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1075 of the War News stream. And of course, it is Sunday night fundraiser stream, and it's a big time to raise money for Ukraine. But we have very big news today because NATO is reiterating its warning to prepare for war with Russia. Also, Kim Jong Un has gotten offended that Putin is throwing his men into the meat grinder. Oh, shocker. And also, Iran reveals new nuclear-capable missiles, which is also quite disturbing to see. But it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have gotten some significant news today that in the Volgograd area, the Ukrainians have been able to strike another significant oil refinery, again, the one that actually is on the southern side of Volgograd, knocking it out probably for an incredibly long time at this point, and it does appear that Putin is fairly angry about this at the moment, as we were able to hear that the offensives in Kursk are still going at full speed and taking the absolute highest number of losses that could ever be expected. Of course, the Russians have their greatest ally and friend, the North Koreans, to rely on up until today, however, as it appears that North Korea's leader Kim Jong Un has been taken aback by the insane meat grind losses that the North Korean expeditionary forces took inside of Russia, and now it appears that they are dragging their feet on sending additional forces to the Russian Federation because of the losses at this point. We have also been able to hear inside of other news that Kazakhstan is now distancing itself officially from the Russian Federation through most economic means, as they are now conducting oil transportation through the Caspian Sea and into Azerbaijan, completely circumventing a Kazakhstani-Russian pipeline that would have originally transported their fuel products into the open market inside of Europe and around the Middle East, and also in the area of the Indian subcontinent. We have also been able to hear as well in other areas that the United States appears to still be going for the Panama Canal, as official statements have been made today by multiple different government agencies that the canal will most likely end up being the United States. In a shocking discovery to many, including us here on the channel, channel, we were able to hear that the Panamanian president today officially declared in a shocking, unbelievable announcement that we had not even found before this case, that Panama officially was a part of China's One Belt, One Road program since 2018 and has been
I'm shocked.
And has been a part of the Chinese financial development and economic plans, which largely create debt slaves out of the countries that are a member of those kinds of One Belt, One Road program initiatives. It appears that the president of Panama today has claimed that they are going to be leaving the One Belt, One Road initiative, but it appears that the United States is not satisfied with this answer, as being a part of the One Belt, One Road initiative is already violating the treaty, ensuring that Panama and the Panama Canal zone would remain neutrally aligned, as it is clearly showing that they were a part of the Chinese sphere up till this point, and appears that they will be for many more months until they can find some way to try and release themselves from the debt slavery that they are now a part of under the People's Republic of China and have been a part of for nearly the past 6 to 7 years. We have also been able to hear some major news in other areas around the world, where we've been able to see that inside of Ukraine, the Russian Federation has been continuing heavy advances on all fronts. And while these advances really aren't advancing, they are taking incredibly high losses as of today. But we have huge news to cover tonight, and of course we have an amazing fundraiser tonight because it is the Sunday fundraiser night for Nova Ukraine. So if you do want to support it, please make sure to. We have a $2,500 goal, and we've already reached nearly $1,000 on the fundraiser. Every bit of support,
Man, coming out swinging. I'm telling you what, man, Nova Ukraine's getting funded tonight.
Man, I'm telling you, it's absolutely incredible. Every bit of every single piece of support goes directly to Nova Ukraine, and it is a massive help to Ukrainian citizens out there inside of Ukraine that are in incredibly perilous conditions, as Nova Ukraine helps them out in getting out of those areas and making sure to try and keep them safe, well-fed, and provided for. It's an amazing nonprofit and an amazing organization to support. But with that, it is time for us to get into the major news today. Moving on down into the Volgograd area, we got to see that the refinery got double tapped. I got to say that this is a pretty wild thing to see. This refinery is one of the newer ones in the Russian Federation, and not that long ago, we actually were down here approximately a week and a half to 2 weeks ago, as the Ukrainians had hit the oil refinery then. And when I mean hit it, they hit it hard back then, and it appeared that the damage was fairly significant, but the Russians immediately got to work attempting to repair the refinery and get it back into operation, as the company Lukoil, which is the largest company in the Russian Federation that produces any kind of refined fuel products, was desperately needing to have some form of refined fuel products make it into the open market to try and at least not lose as much money as they are hemorrhaging currently. It appears that the Ukrainians have now put that on hold permanently, as massive explosions were being seen from the refinery last night, as Ukrainian drones were once again slamming into it and completely knocking it out of service once again. These are the flashes that we actually saw towards the latter end of the stream last night coming from Volgograd, and this is the exact refinery seen right there. This is something that is wild to say, that it's been hit twice. It appears that the Ukrainians are going around and double tapping every single refinery at this point that they're hitting to ensure that they're knocked out for an incredibly long period of time, or that repairs would be financially infeasible to these kinds of oil refineries at any point in the future given Russia's economic situation.
Бля, охуеть, ебача там хуйня,
scary, cameraman.
блядь. Я в ахуе.
Man, that guy looked like he was in a horror story, man.
Блядь.
Yeah.
Пиздились, ебать. Путин, блядь, хуеполеты ебаный, блядь. Где наша Красная Армия, блядь, российская наша, блядь? Закончились все, блядь, под землей нахуй лежат. Пиздец, еба, охуеть вообще можно.
Was that the drone we were hearing in the background, or was that a truck?
I have no clue. Like, honestly, man, beyond this guy's ghoulish-looking face at the start, I don't really understand what the video was showing, but we did get to see in another clip the refinery clearly was burning in this one. Now, that is a drone. That is a drone right there, without a doubt.
Sending in the two-stroke Cub Cadet to take care of business.
And we see the fires and the explosions already happening in the distance at the refinery in Volgograd.
Oh, bleed, the Hellscapers are back.
Man, they really are at this point. Oh, and now we're seeing some sort of... Oh, Looks like there
What
was
the
some
hell?
air defense. There was some air defense around there. That sounded like a surface-to-air missile, maybe of a Pantsir variety. I forgot the specific variant that the Pantsirs in Tunguska's use. It's the same kind of missile, but it sounded as though it was one of those. So for the first time ever, we've actually seen some kind of air defense somewhere in Russia rather than directly on the front lines or at Moscow.
I like how the Russian was more scared of his own air defense than the actual attacking drone. That's how little faith they have.
Man, well, later on in the day, man, you're going to see why that's the case.
Глянь, всё в дымах.
But there's the fire, the explosion on the refinery. We can also see some more air defense action out there in the distance near to the refinery. Oh, and a dead-on hit right onto the refinery right there. We actually got to see the direct impact.
Вон трассера летят.
Also, huge news, we just hit $1,000 on the fundraiser.
Whoa.
We are nearly halfway there to
no.
reaching the fundraiser goal.
I love to see it. We're going fast yet again. The LSA is coming through, baby.
And that's the end of the clip right there, but still very interesting to see. And I gotta say, it is wonderful to know that the Ukrainians were able to hit this refinery again. We also got to hear that Volgograd airport has now been shut down. We were able to see the path of the Ukrainian drone attacks that occurred last night. We only got footage of the Volgograd attack. I didn't really see much more footage coming out from other areas of the Russian Federation, but we were able to hear, according to Telegram, from the representative of Rosaviatia, which I believe is their version of the FAA, to ensure the safety of civil aircraft flights from 2042 Moscow time, temporary restrictions have been imposed on the operation of Volgograd Airport as Jonathan Asquith throws in a $200 donation to the fundraiser.
Damn.
Man,
Look
that'd
at
be
that,
hitting.
man. We're almost up to 1,300 already. Look at that. What is that? We're almost halfway to goal. That's tremendous.
Man, that donation be hitting harder than those drones on that Volgograd refinery. I'm telling you, them drones be droning. But nevertheless, temporary restrictions have been imposed on the operation of Volgograd Airport, and we were able to get the ISAO code. And once we typed that in, it gave us a strawberry, which was around 50 cents a pound in Russia. Remember, the groceries are cheap after all. The airport temporarily does not receive or send flights. Airline crews, air traffic controllers, and airport services take all necessary measures to ensure flight safety is the main priority. Well, I would assume so, considering that the airline crews aren't flying. I'd assume that their job at ensuring safety is fairly minimal in terms of requirements. But beyond that, we were able to see that Volgograd was not having that great of a night. We were able to see a little bit of some explosions happening in Rostov-on-Don. We didn't get any geolocation of this. It appears to be air defense trying to shoot down Ukrainian drones over the Rostov Oblast. But once again, didn't really get a lot more info on this. And that's the end of that clip. And moving on from that, and out of the Rostov area, and up towards Lipensk, speaking of Matthew saying, it seems like they're more scared of their own air defense than they are of the Ukrainian drones. Here's the reason why. The Russians did fire a missile and drone attack into Ukraine overnight, and one of those Kh-22 missiles that was fired at Ukraine ended up failing and slamming down into the Lipensk Oblast in the middle of Russia and exploded right next to a street. This was caught on dash cam right here. Oh, why, look at that.
Oh my. Oh. Okay, that explains why they're scared of their air defense. Oh, they just the camera got scared too and jumped off the windshield.
Dude, the camera went yippee, like it ran away. Good lord! But look at this. I mean, that is quite a sizable little missile right there. Actually, these missiles are huge. Let me go show y'all a Kh-22 up close so that y'all can see what this is. This is a Kh-22.
That's a big boy right there. Now I can see why the Russian was screaming bloody murder in that apartment. He was worried that this thing was about to smash his apartment instead of hit the Ukrainian drone. So now I understand his fear.
Man, he went, yeah, like he was scared to death, man. Like he was terrified. I would be terrified too of Russian air defense or anything flying in Russia for that matter, because it's all incredibly dangerous. Now, many of y'all will know that Putin never has great days these days. It's always a fairly sad day for Putin running the Russian government, watching the army fail, watching the oil refineries get hit, having all of these companies whining and moaning and groaning in his ear that they're running out of money because the Ukrainians just keep blowing up their refineries and all of their capital, reserve capital for the large part, just getting obliterated out there, quite literally at this point. And Putin just has to tell them, look, it's going to get a little bit more expensive. Suck it up. Come on. That doesn't sound like anything else anywhere, but beyond that, we were able to hear that it appears that things are going to get worse. There is a pipeline that actually runs from Kazakhstan down to Azerbaijan through Russia that helps Kazakhstan to be able to transport their fuel into the Middle Eastern market, and more so into Europe as a whole. This has been used quite extensively by Kazakhstan, and they've had to pay a lease arrangement to the Russians to have their part of the pipeline run through Russian territory. But it appears that now even Kazakhstan, who's largely been aligned to the Russian Federation, really because they have no other country to turn to in the area, it now appears that they are even distancing themselves from the Russian Federation as of today, as we were able to hear that apparently they are completely bypassing their own oil pipeline and beginning to transport the fuel directly across the Caspian Sea. If this loads, and we'll wait for the infographic to load, and there we go. So, this is the CPC pipeline, which is the one that Kazakhstan uses to get their fuel to Novorossiysk and then get it out into the open sea. Many of y'all will know that there's been kind of some issues with that, especially considering, in kind of a silly way, that the Ukrainians just keep on sillily blowing up everything down in Novorossiysk where the fueling ports are not usable, and so they can't really transport the fuel from there. That's kind of an issue. Generally, a lot of people would consider that to be a bit of a serious issue. And so it appears that the Kazakhstanis have now decided to transport their fuel by ship from the Tengiz fields and also their harbors further on up inside the Caspian Sea around this area. Now, let me make sure I can show this to y'all directly. Let's see, it's somewhere up here. There are fueling ports inside the Caspian Sea, up here somewhere, and I'm not seeing them. I must be blind. I'd be dipped. But nevertheless, they are transporting the fuel from there, somewhere in this area, down to Baku, and then by that pipeline into Europe. They are completely bypassing the Russian pipeline, and this means that the Russians are not going to be getting their lease money off of the amount of fuel that's being transported, and the Kazakhstanis may simply cancel that one pipeline, and the Russians have lost just an additional little extra amount of money that the government was receiving by running this pipeline for Kazakhstan. What a shame. What a shame. But one thing is for certain, while Russia's allies are diminishing around the world, and sometimes Russia just seems to have less and less of them around. You know, back in the day, Russia used to have so many friends. They used to have friends like Belarus and all the Baltic states and Poland and Czechoslovakia and Hungary and pretty much everything in the Balkans except for Yugoslavia and everything in the Stand series countries. And they used to have this friend called Mongolia and then this one called North Korea. And nowadays, that's just kind of diminishing for no reason at all. People are just being so mean to Russia. Russia has done nothing at all to make everyone stop being their friends. It's just truly a sad situation, and Putin is very sad because he likes to have friends. And the Baltic states, for some reason, they just got mean and turned on him, and they went to the big bully, the United States of America, and so did Poland and East Germany. RIP East Germany. I mean, they just don't even exist anymore. And then Czechoslovakia split up into two, and then they became friends with the West. Pretty much everyone became a friend with the West, and nobody in Russia just knows why. It's a sad thing. It really is a sad fact. But one thing's for certain, that while Russia's friends are still diminishing, you know, and they lost Armenia last year, and now it looks like they're losing Kazakhstan this year, at least they have one friend that they can always count on. But before we get into that, I do want to make sure that we talk about something that is going on in the background, because we have been able to hear that Zelensky has repeated that Ukraine will not engage in negotiations unless if they're involved. And a lot of people are wondering, is that a good move? And I feel like this is just a fairly open and shut case, and it appears that the poll results are unanimous on that as well. Practically 90% of everyone is saying that yes, that's a logical sort of a statement. So Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Well, you basically said what everybody was thinking, but it looks like 90% said yes, Ukraine should refuse until then, and only 5% said no, Ukraine should be flexible on this. So it's a pretty much open and shut case. This is honestly common sense to me as well, as I actually agree with the audience on this. Ukraine has to be involved in negotiations. If they're being excluded for some reason, then that is a pointless situation. Also, that's really stupid and unfair to Ukraine because they're the ones getting slaughtered, and the Russians are also getting slaughtered by the Ukrainians. So without the two parties speaking to each other, it's going to go nowhere. So in my opinion, I think Ukraine should refuse until then. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to completely agree. It makes no sense to conduct negotiations in between the U.S. and Russia, considering that the active defending party in this conflict, the Ukrainians, are not even involved. That would make no sense at all. I think that's a fairly open and shut kind of an answer, and that's why 90% of everyone agreed with that one. I feel like that is a fairly simple one. But nevertheless, Matt, you know one thing that is not simple?
What's that?
figuring out why Russia just keeps running out of friends. Like I don't know why. Like really, looking at it from the Russian perspective, it makes no sense. They go on a peacekeeping operation in Georgia back in 2008. It makes everyone angry. It just makes no sense. Even nowadays, the little countries that are fake that came out of that war, like West Abkhazia, even they don't like the Russians, and their whole existence is because of Russia. It's a crazy thing. It's so sad to see. But of course, the Russians can always count on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea to be their lifelong and well-dedicated friends. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea has always been there by Russia's side every single time they needed them. When Russia needed a fall guy, North Korea was there. When Russia wanted to point and laugh at a country that was not able to produce their own food, that was going to starve in the middle of the 90s, North Korea was there. When Russia just had spare crap to throw away, North Korea was there. North Korea has been there at every single moment that Russia has needed them the most. And at their time of need, at Russia's darkest hour, as so many people turn against Russia for no reason at all, and continue to just bully them and be so mean to them for just no reason. Now North Korea is joining in, because Kim Jong Un was a little bit shocked to hear that 4,000 North Koreans are now dead after they were in Russia for only a month. And from what we're understanding, North Korea is stalling on sending more troops to fight in Russia because of the shocking amount of losses and the way that North Korean expeditionary forces were used as cannon fodder. We've actually been able to see in some closed circles that some people have been able to get a little bit more of an inside look on what's going on in North Korea, and specifically what's going on inside of the North Korean leadership, as it's been a fairly shocking thing, of course, once again, many people have to remember, to witness the 4,000 North Koreans just get wiped out in about a month. That's an entire U.S. brigade's worth of U.S. forces that would have been killed, a little bit extra, as a matter of fact, in a single month. We have been able to see that Matthew has actually posted a very rare picture and an insight into what has happened inside of North Korea's Kim Jong Un or Kim Jong Un. Heard about the
Kim Jong Un, man, he's hooning out on you. I tell you what.
I think he's more so tweaking, but there it is.
Oh,
Oh,
oh man, one of my first forays into memes. It's really more like a boomer meme, I think, but it's not too bad, man. I have to say. Also, AI created the image of Kim, by the way, because Kim never looks shocked out in the public. He always comes out acting all stoic. So this is AI created, but not too bad for our first go.
not bad at all. But this, I would have to assume that that's what Kim Jong Un must have looked like when he heard that 4,000 of them got killed in a month, because usually that doesn't happen. Like, that never happens. It's bad. A war is going really badly when the death camp of a country, North Korea, is even shocked at how many of your own people, how many of their own people you can get killed in a month. It's got to be a pretty bad war at that point, when even the North Koreans are getting shocked at the raw amount of carnage and the amount of casualties that you can produce for your own side. So I would generally have to say, I don't think the North Koreans are going to be that around that long in this conflict. I think there's also a couple of other things that have been going on in the background that are leading the North Koreans to not really be that excited or adamant anymore about supporting the Russians in the war. It may be the fact that they were supposed to send expeditionary forces into the Russian Federation to be able to gain some valuable combat experience and to be able to learn from the conflict, but I believe what may be coming back out of the unit that they sent, which is called the Storm Brigade, is that there's nothing to learn from this. They are just taking incredibly high losses. The Russians really aren't teaching them anything from what we know, and they're just being used as cannon fodder and really not getting a modern concept or grasp of what the battlefield looks like. So for this reason, North Korea isn't really seeing a point in continuing to send more forces, because it's not necessarily like they're learning anything or that this is going well for them. Out of every single faction that has been involved in the Ukraine war so far, the North Koreans, by the amount of soldiers involved and the amount of casualties they have taken over the duration of time that they've been there, they are doing the worst, even compared to Russia, which is doing incredibly bad and was, of course, the worst off before the North Koreans got involved. So I would have to say, I think in general, the North Koreans may end their little friendly relationship with the Russians, where they send manpower and Russia sends them stuff, because they're not really getting a lot out of the other side of that equation, and maybe some of the the stuff they're getting from Russia is incredibly small in number and not really beneficial enough to North Korea to justify the massive amount of losses that one of their most elite units in the Korean People's Army is currently taking inside of Ukraine at this point.
I thought that Kim was waiting for nuclear material of some sort, like some type of nuclear technology. I thought that was the main reason he was sending people over to Russia. I know you said in the meantime they were looking for some short-term food aid, and I think they've received some food from Russia. But the big prize was that nuclear tech, and I haven't heard any reports stating that Putin has handed that over yet, and there's been no intel on it either. So I wonder if Putin's sort of still withholding that so that way he can try to get some more and squeeze Kim for more troops, or what the situation is with that.
I do not really know. I think what the deal may have been in between Russia and North Korea was a lot less profound than a lot of people were making it out to be, because I've always largely been in the camp that they were probably just getting some sort of food aid or domestic aid and not really a lot of military tech and equipment. And considering that they're already starting to become very hesitant about continuing forward on this plan, they may be seeing that there really isn't a net benefit for them here. There's a net negative because they're getting so many of their elite soldiers killed in the KPA. And I also want to remind you all of this. The unit that was sent to Russia is supposedly North Korea's best. It is based in Pyongyang, which is a very elite placement to be put into as far as soldiers are concerned. You have to be one of the best in North Korea to be in this unit, which kind of gives you an idea about how bad the rest of the KPA must be. But nevertheless, you have to be the best to get into this unit. This unit is technically considered to be the martial arts masters, pretty much the dojo masters for the large part. And not only that, they're supposed to be considered elite fighting infantry. These are the guys who largely are responsible for ensuring that training is at an incredibly high standard across the KPA, something that we know is not the case, but nevertheless, this is the unit that is solely responsible for that. So far, they sent all 12,000 soldiers in that unit to North Korea, and now only a third of them are left alive. And we do not know how many of those additional, 2/3 of them are left living. We're assuming, left unwounded. We're assuming that another third of them has been wounded. So out of this entire unit, probably around 4,000 soldiers have exited the front line completely unscathed at this point without any kind of injury or, of course, not dying. So with this in mind, the North Koreans are thinking, we just lost our most elite fighting unit in about a month in Ukraine, which is pretty shocking when you think it only took a month to wipe out the most elite unit in North Korea. But still, they're thinking, we lost all of that, I guess you could say, expertise and experience that we already had. We're not really gaining any back in return, and not only that, the amount of stuff we're receiving from the Russians really doesn't justify this kind of a significant loss. And I think that's why the North Koreans are now starting to look at this again and revisit it and go, maybe we do not want to be involved in this kind of a deal anymore because we're not really getting a lot out of this whatsoever for what we're putting in. So I think that's largely the case, but still a lot of people are talking about this at this point, and reports are saying that Kim Jong Un was shocked by Russia's cannon fodder tactics and withdrew troops. And a lot of people are putting in their thoughts. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so it looks like actually on this poll right here, the audience is almost split, which is shocking to me on this one, kind of like Kim was allegedly shocked. So 42% said Kim is pretending to act surprised, while 40% said Kim was actually disturbed by the loss of his troops, and 13% said we need more intel on it. And on this one, I'm actually going to be with the 40%. I think Kim was actually disturbed by it, but not because he cared for the men. He was just shocked by the attrition rate. He was like, oh my God, 4,000 people got wiped out in what span of time? Like just a month or two? That's horrendous. And that's a lot of men that he actually sent over there to go fight. And he was wondering, probably in his head, damn, are guys really that bad, or is just Russia really bad at strategy? And that probably caused him to actually be shocked. But I don't think that's going to stop Kim from sending more troops. I think he will send more to try to extend the relationship with Putin. So he probably will do it, but he's just not really caring about his people. He's just more caring about his military and how strong it is. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I believe that Kim Jong Un probably was shocked by the losses because, once again, this wouldn't really happen if it was any other KPA unit, but this is supposedly the cream of the crop, the best of the best in North Korea that were sent, and for that reason alone, that's why these losses are really shocking. This is the equivalent, what happened with this North Korean unit, this is equivalent to saying the U.S. Army has completely suspended operations at West Point Military Academy, mobilized the cadre, and then sent them out to war and 2/3 of them ended up dead and wounded, and only 1/3 of them came back alive. The amount of experience and loss that would be felt by the military, or the experience lost, and also the general loss of valuable personnel that would be felt by the Army, would be significant, and that would start to freak out the U.S. military a great deal, especially the Army, because they would be thinking, how the hell are we going to continue to have a whole bunch of senators' sons come into the West Point and get a degree? This is crazy. You know, like, I'm just kidding, but nevertheless, the U.S. Army would be completely shocked and taken a gasp by that, and I think that's the same thing that's happening in North Korea at this point, because this unit practically served in the same role as West Point cadre would. They were the best of the best, the most elite forces there were out there in the Korean People's Army. They were used as the trainers and instructors for other units. And so the fact of the matter is that if most of those don't come back alive, it doesn't matter what kind of experience they gained from the war, which they've gained none from what we understand, because they're going to be coming back and they're not going to be able to impart any of that on anyone, and much less they're going to have to rebuild their cadre from scratch, which takes an incredibly long amount of time, and it's not really easy to do that. So I think that's why the North Koreans are actually shocked by this. It's not really the fact that they care for their people, it's that they care for their government's military abilities, and their military abilities may have just seriously been hindered, or destroyed for that matter, at least for the short while, by the massive losses that unit took inside of Ukraine. So that would largely be what I would assess the situation as at this point. I would think that most likely would be the case. Not that they really care for their people. But go ahead, Matthew.
You know what's interesting? I saw some analysts saying today that North Korea is learning heaps and heaps of information by fighting inside of Ukraine. Honestly, with how many people they're losing in Ukraine, I don't really see them learning anything. And also, to my knowledge, the Russians are still in charge of strategy, and they're the ones telling the North Koreans where to go. So the North Koreans are not autonomous, to my knowledge, and they're being told how to attack and when to attack. And that's why there's been fights between the Russians and North Koreans, because the Russians are generally in charge. Even though the North Koreans have a little bit of say in it, they don't have a lot of say. So I'm assuming that maybe the North Koreans are hoping their top-level commanders, which are currently also in Ukraine, to sort of direct things a little bit, or at least work with the Russians. They're hoping that they can learn something, but they're learning from the wrong people, though. Russia is not a good teacher by any means about strategy, and North Korea does not have the same resources that Russia has to basically replicate their strategy of a meat grinder situation. If North Korea did that, they would be screwed, but Russia can do it because they have a larger country with a larger population. So it's just not, they're not going to learn really anything from this. I think this is actually going to hurt North Korea's strategy in the long run.
You know, something I think might have just happened inside the North Korean government when they heard about the losses? I think the shocking realization came in that North Korea is so far behind the curve in actually fighting a modern war, they may as well be completely hopeless at this point in that kind of a conflict. And that might actually lead to an unintended side effect that might be negative, that North Korea is going to start leaning far more into a preemptive nuclear strike doctrine than ever before, because they're going to know that the military can't even hold its own in a defensive stance in a conventional conflict. They actually could just be brushed aside, even if they set up what they would believe are strong defensive positions, because the North Korean armed forces are just that far behind. So that might be an unintended negative side effect of this kind of a thing that's happened right now with the North Koreans. But nevertheless, in the short term, right here, right now, we are seeing that the North Korean military is completely militarily ineffective, and that there really is no major risk of a conventional war breaking out in the Koreas, because, you know, anyone could fight the North Koreans and win. I have a feeling that Matthew and me could beat the North Korean army single-handedly at this point and win. Like, it's just, they're that weak. Like, it's really crazy when you think about it, Matthew, because if I show, let me see if I can go show you something of this unit online, because it's got to be out there somewhere. North Korean martial arts demonstration. Let me go see if I could show you this. Let's see. Got to find it from
You're
someone.
about to show me where they're chopping the bricks and stuff like that with their raw hands?
Yeah, that's that unit.
Oh my God. Oh, that's that unit that got sent, the one that was like doing the whole theater and everything for Kim, like in the parade?
Yeah, like the one where they would
Oh.
like smash the roof tiles and stuff under their hands and hit them with sledgehammers. Like,
They lost the best of the best, baby. They're losing the best.
let me go get this. I'm just going to show it to y'all because we have to show this for context. Because some of y'all are probably wondering, what unit is this really? Like, how elite are they? Well, this is what they call elite in North Korea, is being good at martial arts on TV for state television. But these are actually soldiers from this particular unit in Pyongyang. So here's the clip. You see them smashing pottery. This is, of course, very important in wartime. And we can see here that Kim Jong Un is very amazed by this, really impressed. We can see a couple of them. We see them doing gymnastics and also hitting more plates and porcelain, as well as bricks and some tiles. The last screaming involved, head slamming as well. Not good for the brain. That may be the reason why they didn't do well on the battlefield, is that their brains have been concussed so severely. We can also see some well-choreographed martial arts here. And we can also see them beating each other with large poles. This is all important, mind you, for modern warfare.
Yeah, Poles, they're fighting with that 24/7 in Russia.
Did that guy just get walloped over the head? Did you see that? Look at this. Watch. Bam! Oh my God, dude.
Oh,
This guy has a
they really
concussion.
just brain that guy, basically.
Dude, this guy is like, I can survive the average North Korean training punishment. You know, and then he gets hit in the back of the head. It's like, oh my God. Dude, I would not want to be in this unit. Also, here comes the sledgehammer deal. Like, this stuff is just honestly barbaric. Has nothing to do with fighting a war, but this was supposedly their most elite unit, mind you. So that's, I'm going to show you that. They're like the Steven Seagal kind of elite, you know, largely stuntmen. So I don't really know why they were, well, I know why they're considered elite, because they also do a lot of the training stuff as well. And in the North Korean armed forces, that kind of a martial arts ability, for some reason, to this day, is still highly sought after and is really admired greatly throughout the entirety of North Korea, because they believe, and this is the craziest thing about living in a dictatorship like North Korea, because of Kim Jong Un, who is big into movies, and he created a massive amount of them in North Korea that were incredibly B tier and C tier. The North Korean public and the North Korean military started to believe that the martial arts that Kim Jong-il had in those movies was actually the way you would really fight a war. And so the entire social metric changed from actually fighting a war kind of in like a partisan style to more so like this heavy martial arts kind of an emphasis on fighting, which never exists. Everyone knows that. An average firefight happens at 400 yards, and unless you have the longest legs on earth, you're not going to be able to hit someone with your leg at 400 yards. So it's a little bit crazy to think that they're big into that stuff still to this day, but that's the elite unit that actually went over into Ukraine, and then they lost about 4,000 of them dead, probably another 4,000 wounded, and about another 4,000 came out probably unscathed at this point. But anyways,
I want to see him bring in Steven Seagal out to go teach these North Koreans how martial arts really works. Like, how come Russia can't use that as leverage? Like, if you give us enough men to go put into the meat grinder, then we'll give you Steven Seagal to train your guys how to fight with that bullshito.
I gotta tell you, I need another taco, and also, have you ever learned the art of bullshito?
Honestly, man, I think that he'd get his ass whooped by these North Koreans, even though they're putting on like a horse and pony show here with like hitting the bricks with their hands and stuff like that. I think even those guys would probably tear him up.
No, they wouldn't. You're wrong. I don't know why you'd say that right to my face. Let me show you something here, buddy. You see this carrot I'm eating in the middle of talking to someone trying to look like a badass with some stupid orange glasses? I'll tell you something, son. Someone tried to kick me in the gut. Their leg would bounce right off. I got so much belly fat, it's unbelievable. Not even a tank could punch through this. it's like, dude, you know what's so stupid is that he talks like that everywhere he goes. And also, it looks like his goatee is made of pubes, just being completely frank with y'all here. That's the most disgusting goatee I've ever seen on a person alive.
I just didn't know that a Madame Tussauds figure could fight like that.
Man, dude, you know, it's crazy, man. Look at this guy. This guy is legitimately insane. I mean, like, every time you look at him, you can just tell he's mentally unwell. I just don't know why people even treat him seriously in Russia at all. And it's just crazy, man. Looking at pictures of this guy is probably one of the saddest people to ever live. Like, he made the worst, well, actually, someone took that title from him recently, but he had made the worst SNL episode up until recently. But the guy is just horrendous at everything he does. And like, I'll be honest, I don't really know how to describe him. There's nothing that even gets close to what he does, but his entire thing is like, it's just horrendous. I can't even put it into words what this kind of a person is, but he is insane. That's the best way I can put it. Nevertheless, we are going to be moving. Also, by the way, big shout out to everyone. The fundraiser has gotten up to $1,800.
Dang! We're over halfway there, man. We're getting super close. What is that like? Let's see. That is $700 away, I think. $600, something like that. Quick math.
Somewhere around there. I mean, it's quick maths, somewhere around $700. We are getting close. And if the Lee Spring Army can make it over that goal, we will make sure to get right to the news because someone just complained about that. Can you get to the news? It's like, we are in the news. This is the news. But moving on from that and on into our next bit of news, we're actually going to be moving out of North Korea and on over into the Americas, because this is a story that appears to actually be building up with some steam and some significance. And there was a very shocking revelation that came out today that I didn't even know about and took me by surprise. Many of y'all will know that about, I believe it was last night or the night before, I think it was actually both of those nights, we have been talking a little bit about the Panama Canal and the nation of Panama. And we've been talking about how the United States is looking at the Panama Canal for its strategic and military interests that largely are inherent for the United States. The United States is the largest user of the Panama Canal, and not only that, around 40% of all container traffic passes through the Panama Canal every year. So every single one of those shipping containers that you see in the United States that's moving around on an 18-wheeler or is on a ship somewhere at a port if you live on the coast, every single one of those containers, 4 out of 10 of those every single year pass right through the Panama Canal. It is one of the most important arteries and connections that the United States has from East Coast to West Coast for maritime shipping purposes. And what is incredibly shocking is that yesterday we were talking about how it appears that the Panamanians were under the control of the Chinese because, let's see, I believe it's H.C. Hutchinson owns the port of Balboa as well as the port in Colon. They also built most of the major infrastructure inside of Panama as well. And not only that, they conducted some significant investments in port dredging projects. All of this, of course, at China's expense, but eventually having to be repaid by Panama. Something shocking came out today that I did not know, because we had been saying Panama is clearly under the control of the Chinese. And not only for that fact, they revoked their recognition of sovereignty to Taiwan and placed it onto the People's Republic of China back in 2018. We were sitting there and saying yesterday that it appeared fairly clear from that evidence alone that Panama had to have been within the Chinese pocket, and China must have some sort of compromising economic control over the nation of Panama. Something came out today that topped all that, blew it out of the water, and it confirmed that we were dead on the nail. And actually, this is a severe economic and strategic security crisis that we are going to be seeing in Panama, because the Panamanian president recognized something that I did not know. And for the first time ever, I did not know this at all. This was news to me today, much like it'll be news to all of y'all. Panama was officially a part of the One Belt, One Road program since 2018, meaning that they have actually been a part of the Chinese-controlled sphere of influence for about 6 years, 7 years going on now, that long. The Chinese not only have conducted all of those significant financial investments since 2018 that would give them compromising financial control over Panama. Panama has actually been under the control of the Chinese economically by being a part of the One Belt, One Road program. If you do not believe me, you can see this right here from Geo Insider, who put out a breaking news statement because after a meeting with the U.S. Secretary of State, the president of Panama announced that his government will not renew the Belt and Road Initiative agreement it signed with China and will try to end it earlier. We do
That's
not know.
not shocking at all, man. Like I was telling, we were actually discussing this off the air, me and the enforcer were, and I said they have to be in the Belt and Road Initiative program. There's no way that China gives out loans and does not strap them down with like a shark loan to get them fully indebted to China, so that way China can control the country of Panama. And sure enough, it comes out today, like the enforcer just read, that they are a part of that initiative. That is the smoking gun proof that China has a big stronghold over Panama. And that was the missing piece of news I was waiting for, like the concrete evidence to know that there's a major problem down there. And that also explains why Panama is being so aggressive with the United States as well and telling us to F off when we're asking them to basically cooperate with us and make sure the canal is protected. They're telling us to F off. That's because they owe a shark loan to China and they're at their behest. So that's why they're saying that.
But here's something that is even more shocking than this, okay? Because I see some people saying, well, that's not really a surprise. The surprise is that wasn't really publicly known. I've read up a lot on the Panama Canal and the Panamanian government and their control of the canal since 1999, really in the year 2000 when they took control. The thing is that nobody, not even the Center for Strategic International Studies, the CSIS, laid out a clear statement saying that Panama had entered the One Belt, One Road initiative at any point. They only laid out the significant financial investments that had been made into Panama's critical infrastructure, which would give the Chinese a major hold over the Panamanian economy and the Panamanian government as a result. Nobody ever said in any of the information that I was reading to put together the Panama video, which is being worked on in the background, that Panama actually was a part of the One Belt, One Road initiative. And if you do not believe the statement that was made by Geo Insider, we've got something even better. We actually have the direct statement from the president of Panama right here, published by OSINT Defender. Unfortunately, hang on. Actually, I believe we actually do have a translation. We do. We actually, so y'all can actually see the president of Panama say that they were in the One Belt Road, One Road initiative right here. If you do not believe the statement by Geo Insider, OSINT Defender actually has the video that they're a part of the One Belt, One Road initiative. So here is the clip.
Importante, que es una decisión que adopté y se la comuniqué. El memorándum de entendimiento del año 2017 sobre la ruta de la seda de Belt and Road Initiative no será renovado por mi gobierno. Eso es así. Vamos a estudiar la posibilidad de si se puede terminar antes o no, pero creo que le toca en 1 o 2 años la renovación, porque es cada 3. Así que esa iniciativa que se firmó, cuando se firmó, en el tiempo que se firmó, no será renovada por mi gobierno. Creo que esta visita abre un camino para construir una nueva etapa de relaciones. Así lo veo yo, así lo sentí de parte del secretario Marco Rubio, y a la vez tratar la medida de lo posible de que se incrementen las inversiones de los Estados Unidos en Panamá. Le expliqué una serie de proyectos de infraestructura que el gobierno tiene en carpeta, en cartera, con el ánimo de que las conozcan y en su momento que se hagan las licitaciones, que comenzarán muy pronto, pues se pueda entrar.
Before we move on to getting into the analysis of this, I do want to say, we just hit the goal! Hey!
Jaga Jaga Eagles of Ukraine. I'm telling you what, man, that is tremendous. We're now $2,551 raised. We are $51 above the goal, and we are just 50-something minutes in. That is tremendous to see once again, and we are coming through for Ukraine yet another Sunday night. I love to see it, man.
And what a hell of an achievement to hit the fundraiser goal again. The LSA is undefeated for an entire 1,075 days of news coverage. We have never missed a single fundraiser goal in the history of the channel. A massive shout out to everyone who's been able to make that possible tonight. And to get y'all back into the big news that we have right here, this practically blows any question out of the water as to what pocket Panama was in. It appears that the Panamanian president is attempting to change direction after they literally were, and I want to make this a little bit more clear, after they told the U.S. to F off, now in retrospect, as a part of a Chinese-run initiative to largely usurp the United States' control economically and strategically of the world. After they told us to F off and it became very clear that the United States is now going to take any action necessary to retake the canal, now the Panamanian government wants to back off of those strong statements, maybe because China is now making it clear they may not come to their aid in this situation, and now they're wanting to say that they're going to withdraw from the One Belt, One Road initiative and now get into trying to have the United States invest in Panama. Have a feeling
I wonder how long Panama was hiding that, because surely someone in the U.S. government knew these details like this. But I wonder if the extent of it has been known for a while, and I wonder if the Panamanian president has been taking efforts to actually hide the fact that they have a Belt and Road Initiative, a legitimate contract signed with China, because his actions indicate that he's very hostile toward the United States, which seems that China really had him in his back pocket. But also, my question is this. He's saying that he wants to end the agreement with China, but surely you can't just end it. Like, there's no, agreement with China that just comes to an end like that. Once they get you tied up, you're tied up. So what does ending it mean? Does that mean that China gets to basically take possession of some stuff in Panama, or what does that mean?
I do not know what that means. I've never seen a country just say we're going to leave the One Belt, One Road initiative. Largely, the Chinese ensure that that's never possible. But one thing is fairly interesting. I see some people saying, America doesn't have a right to tell Panama to do anything. Actually, we do. We have a very big right to tell them because they control the Panama Canal Zone under a treaty that was ratified in 1977. And under that treaty, there is a specific clause that was written in the fine print. Actually, it was written in bold, actually, that if the Panamanians take any actions to align themselves with an adversary of the United States, or for that matter, to violate the neutrality of the nation of Panama and subsequently the Panama Canal Zone, the United States has every single right under the pretext of that treaty to conduct whatever action is necessary to maintain the security and neutrality of the Panama Canal Zone indefinitely. We have every single right under the treaty that Panama is currently signed in 1977 and is still a signing member of to this day to conduct whatever action is necessary to maintain the neutrality of that canal. That is a right that the United States has. People can cry about it, but I would have to say this at this point. If you sit there and say that the United States shouldn't have an invested interest in the future of the canal, you may as well be saying that you're pro-Chinese. The Chinese have made it very clear at this point. Not only that, the Panamanian president has made it clear at this point that Panama has been in the pocket of the Chinese government for at least 7 years at this point. Something that I didn't even find out until today. And I've been doing loads of research on that, and it doesn't really appear that that was a commonly known fact, that beyond the massive investments that China has made in Panama that would compromise the government economically, they've been a part of the One Belt, One Road initiative, which largely is the Chinese sphere. That is literally the Chinese sphere. The Chinese have been sphere building in the Indian Ocean for about 10 to 15 years now under what's called the One Belt, One Road initiative. And we have seen that every single country they get into that initiative, they create a debt slave out of that country. They will conduct massive financial investments in their economic prosperity, but the amount of loan repayments that have to be made on those investments to China are so high, all of those countries default on those investments. And China gets direct control over the economy of the country and therefore over all governmental decisions. So with that in mind, considering that Panama is a part of that right now, not only are they now a non-neutral country, a part of a Chinese aligned sphere of influence, they are violating the current treaty signed in 1977 that stated that they would maintain the neutrality of the nation of Panama and, of course, most importantly, the neutrality of the Panama Canal Zone. That is a serious ordeal because now the most important maritime passageway for the United States in the world is currently under the control of a Chinese-aligned country. That is not a good look. That is not a good thing for U.S. Strategic or economic posturing. And, of course, there's already other things going on with that. We kind of touched that towards the end of the stream. But this is not good. This is the worst thing.
That's the tip of the iceberg, too. Like, we were also talking about this off air. I guarantee you this is the tip of the iceberg. China's been getting a foothold down there in South America for a long time. And I think we're just beginning to learn the extent of their tentacles that have been put down here into South America. So it's going to be a long process to undo China's influence here, if it's even possible to undo it completely, which at this point, I think China might be there to stay in some places, but at least we can try to curb it as much as possible. But like you're saying, Enforcer, the canal is of utmost importance. This is something right here that could sink the U.S. economy if China was able to stop this or put a halt to it. And with them having a large foothold over Panama, that was a very foreboding sign that things could have been going a very wrong direction.
It really is showing that things are going in a wrong direction. And once again, I got to say this. I don't know who in the hell was dropping the ball back in the day when they apparently, because this is something that I guess the U.S. government and a lot of people who were in the really deep know on the Panama Canal knew. So I'm guessing a lot of people in the Department of State, the bureaucrats, knew about this. But it wasn't really known that much in the public to the point that even massive think groups, I mean, I'm talking about huge ones that I was reading about on the situation that have been writing about it since the late 2010s and early 2020s. None of them brought up the fact that Panama was in the One Belt, One Road initiative. That seems to be largely unknown to the public until today. So the fact that this happened around 2017 and 2018 and nothing was done about it then, I don't know who the hell was asleep at the wheel for that to happen. But that clearly is violating the neutrality clause of the 1977 treaty that we are currently a signing member of with Panama. So I would have to say that's a little bit bizarre at this point that happened. So a little bit interesting. And let's see here. I see some people saying, let's see here. Some people are trying to throw out blame. Someone said it was the president prior to the one who was actually president when that happened. No, I generally would say that seems to be a blunder of the current president and the prior president to have not caught this sooner or to have done something about this before they joined the One Belt, One Road initiative and massive financial investment projects were undertaken by the Chinese. At this point, the only action that can be taken, because regardless of Panama's statements today, here's what's going to happen. The Panamanians are under the gun of the United States at this point for being a part of that initiative and taking massive investments from China. So now the president of Panama is going to say, we're going to leave, and China's going to go, okay, will you repay us for all of those investments that we made right now? And they will not be able to with interest. That will be completely impossible for Panama to do because the Chinese set it up so that way that would be the case. And then the Panamanians go, well, we can't without defaulting. And then the Chinese will go, well, you really can't leave then, can you? Or we're going to have to come over there and get our money out of you somehow, some way. And so then the Panamanians will remain as a part of the One Belt, One Road initiative and largely within the Chinese sphere and under Chinese control. That means at this point, the United States either has to have the Panama Canal Zone ceded to us through diplomatic means, or the Panama Canal has to be retaken under any means, because there's no way to ensure the neutrality of the canal beyond this point through the Panamanian government, because them exiting the One Belt, One Road initiative wouldn't be next to impossible, because no country that has gone down that road and made that mistake has ever been able to leave the One Belt, One Road initiative once they're a part of it and have taken on massive financial investments from China. So a lot of people are asking, a lot of people are giving in their inputs at this point because we've asked you all the question. Now that China's Belt and Road Initiative has been exposed in Panama by the president of Panama by his own admission today, so there's really no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That comes straight from the talking head, straight from the source of the Panamanian government, the president of Panama themselves. A lot of people have been asked the question, should the U.S. take the canal? And it seems that many people at this point, the large majority of people, are behind the concept that the United States must retake the Panama Canal Zone to ensure American economic and strategic interests are resolute, and also our defense of the Western Pacific against Chinese aggression is once again resolute as well. We must have the canal for those reasons, and we must have the canal to maintain strategic and economic precedence around the entirety of the world. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
So now with the proven link here between China's Belt and Road Initiative and also, of course, Panama apparently covering that up, it looks like 76% of the audience said yes, the U.S. should retake the canal, while 24% said no, they should leave it alone. And I would say, with that definitive proof now in place, with the Panamanian president literally saying it out of his own mouth, that China has a shark-loan grip on their country, Panama can no longer be trusted with control of the canal. The damage has been done. The Panamanian president has made a big blunder with that, and he should have known going into that that was going to basically be the end of Panama's control over the canal. So as a result and punishment for that, I say we take the canal and fully put it under U.S. control, so that way China cannot get a foothold there again, and also to let the Panamanians know that we're not going to tolerate any of this like backhanded type of stuff like this being done to the United States. So I say I'm with the 76%, and I believe now's the time to really make a point with this one. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would have to be with the 76% as well. This is a prudent, strategic action that needs to be made, that under any circumstances, under any measures, the Panama Canal Zone must return to U.S. control immediately. There is no way for the Panamanian government at this point to back out. And I see some people trying to give a different idea. Also, I want to make this clear because now I see some people going a little bit overboard. No, we're not going to annex the entire nation of Panama. That's ridiculous. We're just wanting the Panama Canal Zone. You don't have to annex the whole country of Panama to get the canal. You can just get the canal itself. And that's what we did back in the day. That's what we're going to do again if we do it. But the United States must have control of this canal. It's very clear at this point. And not only that, the Panamanian government will not be able to secure their independence from the Chinese economically at this point. That is a very obvious thing. That's very clear at this point to me, because no one, and I want to make this very clear, trust me on this one, if you trust me on anything, nobody who has ever entered the One Belt, One Road initiative and has taken substantial investments from any Chinese affiliated company or the Chinese government itself has never ever been able to exit the One Belt, One Road initiative. The statement by the president of Panama today may as well have been useless. It sounds like it's removing a lot of apprehension that they have broken their neutrality, but they still have broken their neutrality, and there's going to be no way to change that. So with this in mind, I would have to believe that the United States of America must have the Panama Canal Zone back under U.S. control. That can either be done through diplomatic, peaceful means, or that can be done through less than peaceful means. But when it comes to the United States maintaining our economic and strategic security, we must ensure that we are able to remain on top of the ball when it comes to the Chinese. I would have much rather seen this dealt with in a peaceful means. For example, when Panama tried to enter the One Belt, One Road initiative and succeeded back in 2017, that the U.S. government would have stepped in and said, if you do that, you're violating the neutrality clause of our current treaty. If that was the case, that would have been far better. But apparently, someone somewhere didn't care at the time. Just look, like everyone knows who would be to blame for that. But someone somewhere didn't look around or really care about it at the time, and Panama just entered that and then took on some of the most substantial investments I've ever seen the Chinese make into a single country like this ever. Like for the Chinese to have built 4 out of the 5 major bridges over the Panama Canal, for the Chinese to have conducted deepening operations around the ports of Balboa and Cristobal, which is up here in Cologne, for the Chinese to have also conducted serious financial investments into the Neomax canals, for the Chinese to have also not only done all of that, but provide significant financial investments into the Panamanian government directly. All of that is clearly moving Panama away from being a neutrally aligned country to a Chinese aligned country, which is in violation of the treaty. It's not only in violation of the treaty, it's giving our direct adversary, our direct rival in the world right now, complete control over literally the only maritime highway that the U.S. uses to get cargo from the East Coast to the West Coast and the other way around. The implications of this remaining under Panamanian control, which is largely Chinese control at this point, is absurd. That would be absolutely insane, because we would be playing Russian roulette every single time a joint sword operation happened in near Taiwan, and if that turned into a major war or not. Because if that turns into a major war out of the blue sometime in the future, and China starts firing missiles at Taiwan, guess what? The entire Atlantic portion of the U.S. Navy, which is a very sizable amount, will not be able to pass through the Panama Canal and make it into the Pacific in time to be a part of that conflict. And that conflict will largely be decided and the fate of Taiwan sealed within weeks. And that would be exactly as long as it would take for U.S. warships to sail all the way around South America and to arrive in the Western Pacific if that canal is shut down. So I would have to say, this is something that has to be done. I would have to agree with the vast majority of everyone who said that that's something that the U.S. needs to do at this point. It is well within U.S. economic and strategic interest to do something like that at this point.
But honestly, though, Enforcer, it sounds like with Panama backing down, it sounds like an intervention militarily might not even be needed. The Panamanian president might realize he's kind of stepped in it at this point, and that's why he's trying to back out of that Belt and Road Initiative agreement. And it could be, and maybe they voluntarily offer to let the U.S. come down there and take control of it once again, where generally it'd be generally peaceful. That would be the appropriate way to do it, especially considering the Panamanian president should know he's messed up at this point. So, back off of your position for the Panamanian president, let the U.S. come down there, and once again, try to resume peaceful relations with the U.S. after making a really, really bad backstabbing moment between the two countries.
Maybe so, but at the same time, I don't think the Chinese would allow that, because that's really the whole reason why they did all of that investing in Panama, was that way they would have direct control over the canal. Because there's what other reason would China have had to invest that much into Panama to get them into the One Belt, One Road initiative, rather than to have some form of direct control through the Panamanian government over the canal zone?
Yeah, I mean, obviously China is trying to take control of it because it's vital to the U.S. economic interest. But it's hard to tell. Like, for example, if Panama knows we're actually willing to go down there with troops to take it over, they might be trying to pick between the two evils here. Are they going to try to deal with China on an economic front, where China might try to intervene and do something to them on that front? Or are they going to trust that the U.S. is going to come down there and basically shield them from any Chinese intervention by retaking the canal? And once again, America might intervene if China tried to do something to Panama from that point forward, I'd imagine.
Possibly so. I have a feeling, though, that the Panamanians are very scared of U.S. action to retake the canal. That's very clear because of what they're doing right now. But at the same time, their hands are tied because if the Chinese start to demand immediate repayments on those loans, because it appears that they're about to forfeit on some sort of a clause or an agreement on repayment, the Panamanians' hands are tied at that point. They can't really do anything, even if the U.S. has a gun bearing down on them pretty much at that point militarily. The Panamanians' hands are tied because what do? Do they conduct a declaration of default and their nation just defaults on all of their loans that have been given to them by the Chinese, and then that sends their economy into complete free fall and chaos? The Panamanians would probably game plan it out that it would actually be better for the U.S. to invade the country, overthrow the government possibly, and then take over the Panama Canal Zone, and then send the entire economy into free fall at that point. Because if the U.S. came in and conducted direct military action, that would make a hit to the Panamanian economy, but nowhere close to the Panamanian government declaring default on all Chinese investments and loans so far.
That was a pretty damn bad move by the fella down there in Panama, I would say. He's put himself in a really bad position, and ultimately, who always pays the price for stupid decisions like this? It's going to be the average citizens of Panama. They get hit the hardest by it. The stupid decision, and now he's got to try to fight not only the United States with what they're about to have to do, retaking the canal, but now he's fighting the Chinese, trying to come in there and basically run their whole economy as well. So between those two things, honestly, it's looking a little bit ugly between those two different things right there. Why didn't the Panamanian president simply say, if they needed money in their country, simply come to the United States and say, we're controlling the canal, we want to stay in your good graces, but we need a little extra money down here to try to boost our economy, instead of turning to the Chinese? That was a really stupid thing to do, like just really stupid.
But the thing is that money always talks, and the United States gave over the canal to him and then left him alone, which was a mistake, because that you should not do that. It's generally a mistake to close yourself off or really not be open to trade with countries that are significantly important to your economic station or economic progress, and Panama was one of those. The only country that came up to them offering them anything was China. And the Panamanians, wanting to see, an increase in prosperity, of course, accepted that because it's free money to them, at least at that moment. They don't know about what will happen later. But at that time, when they agreed to join the One Belt, One Road initiative, they were looking at the amount of money that would be seen, the amount of infrastructure that would be built, the improvements to the Panamanian economy. It will look great. And now they got themselves caught into this rut. Because not only did they take those investments, now they're starting to threaten the neutrality of the canal, because now the Chinese government has direct control over the Panamanian government. And I saw someone say, let's see here. Someone said in the chat earlier, I think you are dead wrong, Enforcer, because the Panamanians would never shut down that canal. I guess you don't know a lot about Panamanian history then, because this almost happened twice in the past. Back in 1989, the United States had to invade Panama because Panama had the unmitigated gall to declare war on us and also kill, I believe it was 1 or 2 U.S. Marines the night they declared war in the middle of Panama City. So I don't think you may know a lot about Panamanian history, because not only did that happen then, and also Noriega, who was the dictator at the time, started to move Panama under the Soviet ilk, trying to get them into the Soviet sphere of influence, which was a violation of the treaty signed in 1977. Before that, there was another dictator that came into power literally just a few months before World War II broke out, that was a fascist, that was a part of Benito Mussolini's rise to power in Italy. He came back to Panama, became the president of Panama, and was very, very openly sympathetic to the fascist powers across the world. If the United States had entered the war during that time that guy was the dictator of Panama, it is highly likely that they would have tried at that point to maybe conduct some sort of a conflict around the Panama Canal, or greatly help out with people passing into the Panama Canal zone and conducting an act of sabotage on the vital locks that keep that entire canal running. That was entirely within the realm of possibility, because FDR even wrote personal letters about it to different Congress members, saying that he was greatly concerned about the Panamanian dictator that just came to power and how much that could jeopardize the situation strategically for the United States at the Panama Canal. This has happened twice. This is nothing new. Like, to say that Panama would not do something like that is actually more unprecedented than saying that they could do something like that, especially at that moment when the United States is possibly at war with China over Taiwan, and U.S. warships are sailing their way, destroyers and cruisers, down to the area of the Panama Canal to pass through, and then the Panamanians just deny passage. What's the United States going to do at that point? We
And
either
then also the Chinese are cutting all of our data cables too, connecting various allied countries. They're doing a ton of stuff really, and so is Russia. They're all preparing for war.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do at that point? Do you go to war with Panama and then possibly see that the locks are destroyed at that point in time, making the canal unusable for years? Or do you sail all the way around South America? Or do you fight an entirely different war here in Panama and hope that you can retake the canal at that point, at that moment when you need it the most? At that point, if that happens, you're just screwed. We are going to lose that war against China about Taiwan. Taiwan will become a part of the People's Republic of China. Our entire island containment plan of Chinese containment, dealing with Japan, South Korea, the Japanese island chain, Taiwan, and the Philippines, has all been ruined because we didn't have control of the canal and we weren't able to leverage enough naval firepower in the Pacific to be able to make a difference. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I would know. And also, let's see. Also, interesting, Walter Really Code. Thank you for sharing that. But I hope that does address that well. But still, this is a huge thing, and it's a really wild, groundbreaking sort of a statement that was made today about the canal. I actually cannot believe that that was admitted, that they actually were a part of the One Belt, One Road initiative. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best we can, and I think that kind of removes the question here. It appears that, per the poll, it really did remove the question for a lot of people, whether that would be the right move or not in support of American and Western interests. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on into the news in Ukraine. And we actually have a pretty decent amount of it, and some pretty funny ones too. But before we get into that, I do want to make sure that we address the top supporters of the night, and also a couple of questions from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so jumping into our largest supporters of the night of the fundraiser, it looks like we had a 300 from Trism 333, that is, and thank you very much, Trism, for that massive support of the fundraiser. Also, we had a 250 from Captain Ted, another massive one, along with a 200 from Jonathan Asquig, as well as a 200 from James Hughes, and then we had a 100 from some guy called The Enforcer, as well as Activista, along with Peace with War, as well as Old Warrior, and Hal Rose, and Neil Vizanot. We also had a 50 from Greg Carrier, as well as Rad Doctor, Nightmare Before Christmas, Purple Gerbil, Tom S., John Combist, Axel K., Cliff H., and also, of course, BC Skyman. And those are all of our top donors for now, and huge shout out to all the top donors and everyone else that donated tonight as well to help get us up to $2,636 raised of the $2,500 goal. Tremendous to see once again. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say a huge shout out and a thanks to everyone who supported the fundraiser tonight. Y'all's help is absolutely tremendous to the folks over in Ukraine. It helps them out massively in being able to help out citizens and folks throughout the entirety of the country. And I got to give y'all a massive thanks so much once again for having a huge amount of compassion and continuing to support. It's been 1,075 days at this point that we've been covering this news here on this channel. And over those 1,075 days, we've run countless fundraisers. I would say at least 130 at this point, from what I'd assume, just because of how many Sundays we've passed through. And it is one hell of a thing to think that every single time we have never missed a fundraiser goal. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. A big congratulations to all of y'all once again for doing another successful fundraiser tonight, because it is the Lee Spring Army that makes this possible, and y'all are making it possible once again for us to say, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so with that, we are on to the next one. We're on into the questions. Sorry I'm distracted here. When I'm looking into the chat and I'm seeing so many interesting things, and I want to make it a little bit clear again. I want to remind some people what's up with this channel. This channel is a pro-American channel in support of American and Western interests. Our moral compass at the end of the day is what is best for the Western sphere and what is best for the United States of America. If you do not like the kind of news that's being presented on this channel or the kind of decision making, I'm sorry, but it's not going to change. So that's largely all I can tell you about that, because if you don't like the idea of the U.S. retaking the Panama Canal, I largely consider that to be pro-Chinese at this point, considering that the Panamanian president just came out today and said that they were a part of the Chinese sphere and are currently a part of the Chinese sphere. So saying that the United States shouldn't do a damn thing about the Panama Canal and that we should simply let the Chinese stomp all over us wherever, you may as well be saying that we are going to give up Taiwan to China. We're going to give up everything in the Western Pacific to the Chinese. We may as well give up the entirety of Europe to let them be their own independent sphere with strong, heavy economic relations to the Chinese. We may as well just be saying, let's carve it all up and give up at this point and go home. And that's not at all what I'm about here on this channel. So
Well,
Sorry.
actually, unfortunately, it looks like a lot of minds have actually been changed because I'm seeing here that Captain Ted, who threw in massive support to tonight's fundraiser for Ukraine, he said, "I thought you were wrong about the China-Panama connection, but I'll admit that I was wrong as there's plenty of evidence and news articles proving it's real." And that's perfectly fine. And Captain Ted, I understand where you're coming from because me personally, I was saying the other day, I would personally want some more evidence proving the China connection, and it really wasn't provided until today. But apparently, the statements were being made with the knowledge that Panama was a part of the Belt and Road Initiative, and now we have the evidence out in the public for everybody to see. And in my opinion, that's why it's so important for the government to be transparent and tell us everything they know within reason that doesn't violate national security secrets. So that way people can fully understand the situation, and that way people aren't getting confused and mixed up and fighting against our own interests. So with that information out, I think it cleared a lot of things up for many people.
I see that it really did. I'm glad to see it. But talking to a group of people who weirdly, I don't know what it is because by the polls and the numbers, most everyone agrees with the stance we're taking on this channel. But for some reason, the group that does not agree is always the loudest in sometimes in the live chat on things like this. And I just have to make it fairly clear at this point. The Panama Canal and American action to secure the Panama Canal is within American and Western interest at this point from here on forward on this channel. If there is someone who is going to try and say something negative or derogatory about the channel or something along those lines over that, we're going to largely consider that to be anti-American and anti-Western, because at this point, I don't know what better an argument could be made that Panama is within China's pocket than the president of Panama is saying that directly. So that is inherently a risk to U.S. security interests. There really isn't even a debate on that anymore. That's incredibly clear, because otherwise, if it was not a threat to U.S. security interests that they were a part of the One Belt, One Road initiative, then why in the world would the president of Panama even say at all today that they were going to leave it? That clearly shows that it was a threat, and he knew that, and then they were going to tell the United States to F off when we brought that up to them just a little while ago, which is already showing us the real intentions behind the Panamanian government and where their loyalties really lie, which is more towards the Chinese sphere. And this canal right here, built by tens of thousands of American workers over the course of 10 years, the largest civil infrastructure project ever undertaken at that time in history. Thousands of American workers and thousands of foreign contractors died building this canal. American blood is in this canal. We've run the canal up till the point we gave it over to the Panamanians for nearly 100 years. And we're going to sit there and say it's fine for the Chinese to run the literal beating artery of U.S. maritime trade. Totally fine. That is insane. Like, to be entirely honest, to the small group saying that would be absurd. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to some questions. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so moving into our first question here. This one goes to Guamson Cruz, who said, how much air defense do you think that Moscow actually has left?
It's probably not much. I'm actually thinking that it's somewhere around several Pantsir batteries that are deployed around the city, because we've never seen any larger caliber batteries being used around Moscow, like say an S-300 or an S-400. Every single time we've seen an air defense battery in operation, we have always seen that it's been a Pantsir S-1 of some sort. So I believe that there is maybe 2 companies of Pantsir S-1 air defense batteries that are in that area at this time, but that's about it. So maybe an air defense, that you could call it an air defense battalion, is deployed in Moscow and is covering practically the entirety of Moscow city. That would be my best guess and assumption based off of the air defense activity that we've seen in Moscow in the recent month. And so with that, I hope that does answer that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of this segment.
All right, and this one goes to Neshoba, who says, is it true that Russia is running out of missiles as we speak?
Russia is always in a process of running out of missiles. I don't really know how their missile production is working in the background, because according to what we knew, about a year and a half ago, they were supposed to have entirely run out of missiles, and then they never did. So it's a little bit interesting how that's working. I'm assuming that they're pretty much producing new missiles or refurbishing old ones up into serviceable condition, and then they're using them practically as soon as they're ready. So as far as Russia running out of missiles, they're practically out of them, and then they just build up enough of them to conduct another air attack, and then they launch those, and then they go and build up another more. I don't really know how much there are, though, because it's a little bit weird how that works, and our numbers seem to be a little bit off with that because they have more missiles than we originally anticipated off of the pre-war numbers. And so with that, I hope that does kind of address that somewhat well, and also give a little bit of an understanding that there's some gray area there, so we don't have an exact number. But with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on right back into the rest of the news.
All right, and this question goes to Tom Exman. He's got an interesting matchup here. He said, who'd win in a contest? Would it be the North Koreans or the Belarusians?
Oh my God. Wow,
That's a
man,
hell of
what
a
a
matchup.
competition. Let's see. I think the Belarusians would win. Because I don't think they're as bad off as the North Koreans. Like, the Belarusians have some concept of what the modern world looks like a little bit, because while they're cut off, they're not that cut off. But the North Koreans are so cut off, they probably still think it's the 60s and the 70s out there. You know what's crazy? This is the craziest thing. North Korea is so isolated that a lot of people in North Korea still believe that Russia is the Soviet Union. So it was a bit of a shock, I guess, to all of them to hear that the Soviet Union didn't exist anymore, and the Russian Federative Soviet Republic was now fighting the Ukrainian Federative Soviet Republic while all within the Soviet Union. I'm sure that made no sense to anyone because they had to completely change what they were teaching everyone in school to make that make sense, I suppose. But the North Koreans are wildly isolated, technologically, culturally, innovation-wise. There's nothing going on there. It really is the best argument against closing a country off and making it isolationist is that you just fall way behind the times and you can't even really catch up when you get there. The only country I know of that actually did that well was Japan. When the United States showed up, and we did this thing that we called gunboat diplomacy, which is where we gave them this offer. We said, either you'll open up to trading with us, or we blow you up. What is your pick? And the Japanese picked a trade. So then the Japanese were like, wow, this is a crazy world. And think about it. I want to point this out, man, because this is really crazy when you think about this. When the Japanese got forced into trading with the open world, it was the 1850s. So it's right before the U.S. Civil War. So samurai, dressed up in traditional samurai armor, still were wandering around Japan at the time the U.S. had finally just started to build railroads across most of the country, and just a few years before the deadliest war in U.S. history would break out. That's when that's when Japan finally got to see what the outside world looked like after hundreds of years of being isolated from everything but Portugal. So then they're like, oh my God, they're like, this is crazy. So they start traveling around and they start figuring out what they want to do, or where they're wanting to really go in the world. So this is something cool some people may not know. In Britain, there's a street in London that's famous called Savile Row that creates bespoke suits. They're incredibly famous, really popular back in the day, and especially really popular to the Japanese emissaries that arrived in Britain and saw them. And they went, wow, that's so cool. And so the Japanese came up with a word for suits, and it's such an interesting one. It's Sapporo, which is pretty much a Japanization of Savile Row. So that's what the Japanese call their suits, is after the British street Savile Row, where the suits were made.
Interesting. That sounds like oddly close to another word that starts with S in Japanese that means something a lot worse, but pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close, but totally different meanings, man. You could go get a Sapporo, or you could do a, it's like, we won't even say it. I don't know if YouTube likes that or not, but
Whoa.
But beyond that, they began to rapidly industrialize, and even still to this day, Japan's actually a highly advanced country technologically. Really, they kind of set themselves out to do that before even World War II happened in the U.S. Heavy investments began to occur into Japan at the end of World War II. Well, really, post-war in World War II. That had already started to happen in Japan. And that's really the only country I've ever known of or heard of historically that exited isolationism and then just skyrocketed into being one of the most economically important and influential, and also one of the most culturally influential countries in the world, because I'm sure everyone knows something of Japanese culture. Like, it has to be something. For example, sushi, that's a very common food around the entirety of the world at this point that everyone knows. Another thing that people may know from Japan is anime. I mean, an insane amount of people know about that. I don't watch it, but even I know what that is. It's really crazy, the kind of cultural influence. I mean, everyone knows what a Toyota is, or Mitsubishi, or Yamaha, which are the Zaibatsus of Japan. I mean, it's crazy to think that Japan was really the only isolationist country that truly succeeded, just popping right out of isolation and right into the modern world. But they did it incredibly well. North Korea probably would not, because, I mean, that's going to be a little bit of a tough sell. They're really going to do it kind of like Russia. Coming out of the Soviet Union, it will be done okay, but it won't be done exceptionally well like Japan did it, or for that matter, South Korea did it, because South Korea did insanely well post-World War II. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Kind of an interesting point. But moving on from that, while my esophagus finally collapses for
I
once
heard
in
that
like 4
esophagus too,
months.
man. That esophagus almost collapsed on the canal.
Man, that was good one. But anyway, zooming on from that and into our location unknowns, we were able to hear that a vice governor was killed today by a mine. This was a picture of the guy.
Damn. I won't make that comment.
Man, call me a dump truck, bleh, the way I be carrying around all that hog, bleh. Yeah, but anyways.
You know what's interesting is I don't even have to make the comment. People already know what I'm going to say. Like, that's how it works. Also, this dude's wearing a Popeye the Sailor Man shirt. You got to give him credit for that.
Man, he's like, I might be wearing the Popeye shirts, but I can promise you, all of this is 100% Brutus, bleh. Like, I promise you. But in the Kursk region, the vice governor of the Primorsky Krai of the Russian Federation, Sergei Efremov, was blown up by a mine today. Another officer also got killed with him. Efremov was the commander of the volunteer detachment Tiger, which was formed in the summer of 2022 on the basis of the 155th Brigade. Rest in pieces. And so with that, moving on into the actual Kursk front news, we were able to see some drone action. Oh my goodness, in Kursk. That was quite loud. And we can
Man, what are they doing? Fighting in the chicken pens now?
Man, they're fighting in that mesh wiring. It's like an airsoft match out here. And there he goes. He's running for the hills. Oh.
Running for the hills that don't even exist. He stopped in the hay field or something. What
Oh!
the hell? A drone. It paid him a visit.
Wait a minute. Was that a pile of grain on the ground? Was that grain from Ukraine?
Yes. Try some green from Ukraine. It's tasty. Also, try this spiciness on the side.
Here, we can make the grain from Ukraine more palatable to the Russian diet. Have some gunpowder in your grain.
You know, something like that. Oh, man.
Oh, Bliat, I've always wanted spice in my grain, Bliat. Oh, yes, look at this.
And
Is it supposed to do that? It's like Salt Bay. He showed up and put salt on it.
Oh, wait a minute. Look, someone else is under the grain.
What the? Was he hiding under there the whole time?
I
Look at
think
him
so.
go.
Dude, this guy is running. I was running.
That dude took off like a cartoon character.
Oh, and they got him. And he didn't make it that far. Oh, my goodness. Goodness gracious.
Also, by the way, I believe Hal Rose doing a 333 there in the live chat. I think they just brought us to the $3,000, which is crazy.
Krasa.
But anyways, let's get back to these Russians.
We're just rushing to see him. Uh-oh, and there goes the bomblet on a whole group of them. Oh! And there goes a couple of them. And they're running away.
Man, when you're Russian, but there's no time for Stalin.
Man.
That is such an old joke, by the way. I remember that one way back in damn middle school. That was like freaking a decade ago.
Man, I'm telling you, man. I think it was like the Russian KFC when you're Russian to eat and there's no time for Stalin. And they had like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, and they had that picture of Lenin and it was like KFC or something like that. But anyways, we could see them just still getting more Russians. I mean, holy moly. Someone call in the fire department here because there's some fires going on down there.
And someone asked me, is Popeye in the public domain? And the answer is yes. Ukraine loves Popeye the Slayer Man. He's a great guy. Trust me, he's wonderful.
Oh, they're going to put Popeye out there as a horror movie.
I just chopped this couple in half or something like that. You know, it's like, I don't know what Popeye the Slayer...
Wait, why do you turn into the Flex Seal, man? I'm going to saw this couple in half.
Man, I don't know.
Oh.
I had to come up with something. Man, you know, the real Popeye, if he was the Slayer Man, though, man, he would go, looks like they got chopped in half. I guess you could call that a half a family or something like that. You know, it's like...
Oh, man, looks like you're going to need some super glue for that. Oh, man, did you see a doctor? Might have to get some stitches. Oh.
Popeye was honestly a tweaker, man. Like, Popeye the tweaker, man.
Man, if he was a real tweaker, though, you'd hear Popeye say, "Whoa, that's a bad case. Cover this, cover this, cover a trip to DC.
Wait, no, you'd hear this. Wow, I finally got that trip to DC. Something like that.
Wow, grifting on the regular. Wow, making it look easy. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Can you believe that the hot dog man ripped off his logo from a far bigger channel that had been around years before him? Crazy, right?
Not
Nuts. We found that out today. But moving on from that, we also got to see soldiers of the 1,129th taking down a Russian drone.
Also, when I was doing that Popeye impersonation, I just bit the hell out of my tongue when I just did that. Like, I just went chomp. I was like, oh my God. I was like, that's so bad.
Man, it's bleeding. That thing bleeding, B.
Man. Oh, the Frog UK coming in with a low battery.
Man, Frog UK 217. Up from West Gloucestershire. It's like, yeah, get him.
They're importing them violent frogs from Birmingham.
Anyways, we also got to see a Bergpanzer at work. Look at this thing. Wow, these are why the Bergpanzers are the best in the world. And just look at them. What a cool Bergpanzer. What a neat Bergpanzer. A long-lasting Bergpanzer. Moving on from that and into our location unknowns. Y'all hang on. We're about to have a real segment here. We got to see some Ukrainians surviving an FPV drone strike. The drone just didn't blow up. It hit the window. All right? And it hit the window and just didn't explode. You can see it right there. That might be the bomb just sitting on the windshield. Oh, man. Someone said, I hate to see the mystery hot dog man. Believe me, everyone who has says they regret it. But moving on from that and on into our next clip, it's time for the segment everyone loves and adores. It's the one we came up with recently. It's been a massive fan favorite since its inception. It is the Rudniks section, and we have new ones. Check it out. Holy moly!
Oh,
my
no,
God.
Man. They put some more rubber on the side of a Lada, I guess that is, and they put a table, an IKEA table on top.
Oh! That's what I don't even know what that is. Oh my God.
Oh.
Dude,
Why is the hood up, though?
I don't even know. I was about to say, you can't even see out the front of that one. Oh my Lord. Dude, this is bad.
Man, this is awful. Also, someone said, did I miss the Panama coverage? Man, that was like the whole middle of the stream. That was a huge segment, by the way. You have to rewind.
Oh, my Lord. I got to tell you, they're getting worse.
These Rudniks, they're getting out of control. Rolf motor oil with a German flag on it. That's kind of interesting.
Strats to Warsaw in the one tank, yeah? Like, it's like...
I thought the Ruskies didn't like the Germans, but yet they're buying their motor oil?
Man, the Russians these days are like, man, I get to tell you, these fishes, am I right? And then out of the blue, you just hear them in a random conversation. Just sneak by lightman and they Deutschen, you know, it's like, dang, it's like, I think they're lying about that one. It's like, we better keep an eye on them. But moving on from that and on into our next clip, we also got to see more Rudnik. This is a BMP with hair.
What in the world? Like, what would that be seriously used for? Like, I see the little, like, shreds up front just to stop drones coming in, but what's the, like, hair on the side for?
I don't know, Matthew, but I have a feeling that whatever situation they're going to get into, it's going to get pretty hairy.
Yeah, it's already hairy. They're going into battle already. Pre-prepared for this.
Dude, they sat there and said, Bleed, you thought you saw us dodge and weave. Now we're coming in with just the weave. It's like, man, it's like, respectably, I gotta say, this is a goofy one. I've never seen anything like this before. But anyways, moving on from that and on into our last clip of the location unknowns, we also got to see the Russian casualty report. Oh, look at that!
Oh my goodness, we got 2 Bobcats today. Let's see, it's uno, and then it's, what's the 2? What's the 2? Number 2, what's 2? Come on, man, you know Spanish.
Dos?
Yeah, we got dos. We got them dos. But tell us more.
Man, we got 2 Bobcat skid steers today, too. We were very lucky today. And Miss DC, the keeper of the records, put out a report. Troop loss, 7-day average, dropped to the 1,400 range. 99 drones, the 17th highest day loss, tied with November 18th of 2024, and other categories are close to 7-day averages. What a number. What a number. Sheesh. And let's get into the actual casualty report because it is very impressive. 1,300 and 20 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed in the past 24 hours. 14 APCs were also knocked out as well, along with 80 supply trucks, 2 main battle tanks, 45 artillery pieces, 99 drones, 1 MLRS, and 2 Bobcat skid steers. Overall, the losses were good. The casualty report is bussin'. Sheesh! Moving on from that and out of that area, it's now time for us to move on into Vovchansk, where we got to see the Ukrainians shooting down an FPV cool as a cucumber. And they got it.
That is some damn good shooting right there. Like a moving target that small, that far away, that's just fantastic.
Man, it really is fantastic, man. Absolutely amazing. And we also got to see some picture of Vovchansk today.
Oh, crap, man. It looks like freaking like the ancient Egypt or something like that when it got flattened.
Man, it's been quite literally reduced to ruin. I'd like, the last time we saw Vovchansk, there were some buildings standing. At this point, there's practically none. I've never seen a city this thoroughly destroyed in the entirety of the war, so this is a little bit fresh and new for the large part in the amount of devastation caused. They said Mariupol was rough. I'd have to say Vovchansk is rougher, because it's been reduced down to not even foundations at this point. It's just nothing. But moving on from that now of Vovchansk, it's now time for us to move on to the Kupiansk front, where we get to hear that Russian supply lines are apparently stretched, according to Euromaidan Press. They said a frontline report. Russian supply lines collapsed near Kupiansk as Ukrainian drones annihilate convoys and armor. Ukrainian drones operators exploit a 40-kilometer Russian supply line near Kupiansk in Kharkiv Oblast, destroying 15 armored vehicles in 5 days. Sounds like the losses be lossing, but they are lossing particularly well at Novobatmakivka, which means New Bakhmut in Ukrainian. So let's check it out. This appears to be from the Muramasa unit. It is from the Muramasa unit, and there's a Russian vehicle right down there. Bloop. Toasted. Would you like your Russians whole grain or regular? I would like them whole grain. Would you like it toasted or not toasted? This is Rus way. Have it your way, Bliet.
Have it your way. Ha. Man, but give it to him.
Whoa. Look at him. Give it to him. I mean, whoa. I think they're kind of getting soft these days. You know, back in my day, I used to be able to take an FPV to the chest. Whoa.
Whoa. I mean, they're just not making them like, chesty pullers anymore. I mean, they're turning into snowflake fallers. It's just something else.
Man, a dead on imitation. It's perfect, man. Oh, man.
Like, damn, when I was slogging it out in the corpse, I was, I was really going at it. I was a tough one.
Man, I'm gonna be honest, man. Like speaking of like that like whole snowflake thing that the guy says, the most snowflake thing is to go out of your way to make yourself sound extra super special. It's like, wow, what an ego. It's like really, it's like, whoa, look at that ego.
Honestly, the toughest veterans that I've ever personally known are the ones that will not talk about their war experiences, and they go out of their way to seem like they've never been fighting in a war and had to, do the inevitable of having to take somebody out. That's usually the toughest ones. Usually the least toughest ones are the ones going around acting like hard asses all the time.
Yeah, I mean, usually the people who I knew that were veterans that were in war and did sometimes horrendous things, they were like the kindest people and the nicest people you ever met. And then, finally one day, they would tell you about what they did, and you'd be like, wow, dang, that was you? And they would be like, yeah, that was me. I just, I don't like to talk about it much. It's like, jeez. It's like, these people have been through much. The one thing I've seen, though, is that usually it's the not any disrespect to logisticians, but it's usually the folks in the who were veterans, who were never in combat, who go out of their way to be like, whoa, look at these people. They're a bunch of softies. It's like, why are you disrespecting them? It's like they're out there doing their thing. It's like, don't disrespect them. And it's like, those are soldiers of the United States. It's like, most importantly, those are citizens of the United States as well. It's like, why in the world are you going out of your way to diss on your own people? Like, it seems rude to me. But anyways, let's see here. I believe, yes, this is new footage from the Muramasa. We got more footage from the Muramasa.
The Muramasa, they're really getting good. Also, what is the name of Medyar's, is it Medyar's Birds? Is that the brigade?
Yeah, and I think it's a part of the 36 Marines, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I wonder why he stopped putting out so many videos recently. Like, I'll see him occasionally, once or twice a week, but they're not like every other day like they used to be. Now it's Muramasa and these other groups doing it.
It really is interesting how that is the case.
I guess he moved on to a different aspect or something, or at least some other people are putting out videos more often or something like that.
Now you see the drones circling over. And that's the end of the clip right there, but still very nice to see. Moving on from that and on to our next clip, we also got to see the 109th hitting even more Russians, once again under the Muramasa name. It's like a brand name at this point. It's under the Muramasa franchise. But here it comes. They're getting another one. I don't know
As
what...
we can see here, it has the mark of Muramasa on board. That left people lost for words. They were not sure what words to follow that statement.
And also
Someone said, someone is definitely a Russian bot. Allow me to investigate.
I see some people in the chat talking about the thing that we were talking about for a brief moment about folks who have gone through much and folks who haven't really gone through much in their kind of actions outside of the military when they get out. I'll be honest, like, here's my take. Some people are, some people say, I'll put this out there as well as I can. Some people say that veterans deserve unconditional respect, and I'd largely agree with that. But when someone's an asshole, they're an asshole. Like just because you're a veteran does not mean you have a justification to act like a hard ass and an asshole to everyone. Because none of the folks who went through World War II that I knew of that went through that war and came out of it, I didn't hear that a lot of them were assholes. I heard some of them were drunks. Some of them were pretty violent, but they were called assholes. But most of those people were nice folks. I don't really know what it is these days with some folks acting like just because they do something, they could be an ass to other people. Because that never has been the case before. I don't know what it is with that now. And also, I don't like that. All right, like, I'm just going to be clear. I don't care what anyone's done. I don't care if someone's been the president of the United States. If I run into them and they're an asshole, they're an asshole. That's just what it is. I don't care if they were the president or they served in the military or if they were a janitor or what. If someone's a nice person, they're a nice person. If they're an ass, they're an ass. That's how I look at it. And I don't like to, I don't like to try and mire the waters there and be like, well, I'm just going to overlook everything because, someone did this. Like, I don't know. Like, that isn't really something I do. But anyways, we did get to see that the 155th did capture a Russian soldier near Pokrovsk. And also, Call Me Trey said, drunk does equal asshole, to be honest. And not really, because, they were kind of like the drunks that were like, silly, that kind of a deal. Like, they tried to get drunk to laugh around and joke and stuff. That's at least what I used to hear. Some of them were mean drunks, though, because there's also those as well. But people called them for what they were, they didn't go, hey, look, don't say that about them. It's like, no one did that, because that just seems goofy, when you think about that logically. But anyways, if the EU is willing to replace U.S. funding, should Ukraine continue the war until Putin is ousted? That's the question we've asked all of y'all. That was a really abrupt move into that. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so let's preface that a little bit more, because that was a little bit too quick. They said, if the EU is willing to replace U.S. funding, should Ukraine continue the war until Putin is ousted? So it looks like 83% said yes, Ukraine should continue fighting, while 7% said it depends on the deal, and 6% said no, Ukraine should pursue some peace. And I would say this, considering the fact that right now Ukraine appears not to be involved in the peace talks, that seems to be a bit of an issue. And also, it seems to be that the U.S. and the Ukraine are not on the same page right now with what is actually required to maintain a peace. So I would say, since the EU looks like they are stepping up and replacing some of the U.S. funding, and once again, I want to reiterate, the U.S. has not backed off their funding. But for example, if Ukraine says to the United States, after they come up with a proposal for a peace deal, that Ukraine's not happy with it, then they need to find an alternative source of funding unless the U.S. decides to pull their funding away. So that's the big question, whether or not the U.S. would do that. And right now, I personally don't think they would. But if the EU would step up, that would be a massive help, and that would be an alternative source of funding that would allow Ukraine to keep the war going to make sure Putin is ousted. So generally speaking, I'm with the 83%. I think Ukraine should keep fighting until Putin is ousted, because in any other circumstance, Putin will return in just a couple of years to fight. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I would have to say that I would agree with the 83%. I believe that Ukraine should continue to fight if they are able to secure support well and into the future. I believe that's something that they should always do. That would be a smart move. And some people are saying that the U.S. might withdraw support. I'm not thinking that they will. And I'll be entirely honest with y'all. Matthew and me have been talking about this a lot in the background. The action, and I'm not saying this in a political way, but this is how we're taking it because this is quite literally reality of it. The actions of the president or whatever the hell they are from day to day. Like, it's really hard to even make a clear picture of what's going on. I'll just be completely frank with y'all, because one day the president's saying one thing, and then the next day he's saying the opposite. So, generally what we're doing right now to figure out what's going on and get a clear, concerted picture out to all of y'all is that we're looking at what all of the government agencies are saying that are a part of the executive branch. And that's why we come out with clearer statements than most other people are able to get at this point, is because we're not really looking directly at the talking source. We're more so looking into the periphery of everyone who's getting their orders issued from that talking head. So with that in mind, I would generally say that Ukrainian support is probably going to be resolute well on into the future, and whatever is going on right now, I still think it would be great for the Europeans to ramp up support, because that would make sure that the Ukrainians still have a fail-safe fallback if for some reason U.S. support was to cease. Although, to be entirely honest with y'all, looking at all of the different governmental sources, it doesn't appear that that would be the case. But I hope we were able to make that a little bit clear to y'all as well, because once again, we're not wanting to be political at all on this channel. But once again, I do want to kind of be honest with y'all here with our news gathering side of things. The last administration was fairly easy to follow because there was usually hardly anything said, and when something was said, it was pretty straightforward. This administration, on the other hand, is very difficult for us to follow because they're doing about 20 things a day. And not only that, the things they're saying directly from the president change sometimes completely from one day to the next, while the background information is consistently the same. So it's making it very difficult for us to be able to gather the news on that and to keep you all apprised on it. But it does appear that based off of everything else, support is definite at this point. So I hope that does address that the best we can. And with that, we did get to see this prisoner that was taken by the Ukrainians in Pokrovsk today.
Владимир Владимирович, 23 октября 1978
This guy's spilling his life story, I think.
Man, and sadly I have to mute it because the music is copyrighted, so we're largely going to end the clip here, but this is a prisoner taken by the 155th. And so with that, we are on to the next one, further on down the way, down in the area of Vasilivka, where we got to see them hitting the Russians. And take a look at this. There's a Buhanka out there, a pickup Buhanka.
Oh.
Man, I hate the pickup Buhankas. They're ugly. Like, they're just naturally ugly. They may as well be in the Rotniks section automatically. Ooh, and that thing's toasting.
Why the hell does this look like different terrain than Ukraine? Why it looks weird for some reason.
You know, it is kind of weird. Maybe, Dan, let me think here. This wasn't the Zaporizhia region. Maybe this isn't around Vasilivka. Maybe it's near the Aleski Sands, because it kind of looks like that.
Yeah, it has a sandy look to it. It's kind of odd.
Yeah, it's a little weird. Maybe it's around the Aleski Sands. I'm just going to move the marker just in case, because it said it was the Zaporizhia front, but that honestly kind of looked a lot like the Aleski Sands. But with that, we're going to be rounding out that clip right there, a fairly short one, and moving on up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1075 of the war. And so with that, here is the clip. Oh, wait,
speech! A speech!
That's not the most recent one. Hang on.
Oh.
Here we go. Speech!
Speech!
Дорогі українці, українки, тільки сьогодні завершились рятувальні роботи в Полтаві після удару російської ракети. Усього ця ракета вбила, на жаль, 14 людей, із них двоє діти 9 та 12 років. Мої співчуття рідним та близьким. Постраждали 20 людей, в тому числі 4 дітей від зовсім малечі, 3 місяці дитині до 12 років. Ще 22 людини були врятовані. Повністю зруйнований під'їзд будинку з 1 по 5 поверхи. Це тільки одна російська ракета, яка принесла стільки болю, стільки страждань і втрат. І саме тому для України і для реального миру потрібні гарантії, що таке зло буде зупинено надійно, не просто якимись словами чи кількома паперами, а тим, що здатне буде гарантувати відсутність російського терору, ППО. І достатня кількість протиракет – це обов'язкова умова наближення миру. Я вдячний всім партнерам, які нам допомагають із цим, і які мають повне бачення, що саме нам потрібно. Патріоти, Айріс-Ті, всі види необхідної ППО, розвиток дронів, інвестиції у виробництво зброї тут, в Україні. Це захист життів наших людей, захист самої ідеї, що мир можливий. За цей тиждень ми маємо нові пакети підтримки від Швеції. Значний пакет – $1,200,000,000. Дякую, Швеція. Новий безпековий пакет від Фінляндії. Також пакет від Хорватії. Дякую. Ми працюємо над тим, щоб і наступного тижня були такі потрібні рішення для України. Рішення щодо підтримки нашої держави, наших людей, нашої армії. А сьогодні я хочу відзначити рятувальників, які проявили себе саме цими днями і тижнями. Полтавщина передусім. Працівники ДСНС України в області. Олександр Слюсар, Сергій Чевишев, Юрій Купряков, Олександр Бондар, Сергій Маргун. Дякую, хлопці. Також рятувальник з Черкащини, які зараз допомагали в Полтаві. Володимир Бабак, Сергій Сергієнко, Олександр Коломієць, Андрій Куцевол. Дякую вам, хлопці. Сумщина, Артем Нечитайло, Ігор Круговой, Дмитро Грицина, Максим Лавріненко, Роман Чигрін. Дякую вам і усім вашим колегам. Головне управління ДСНС України в Одеській області – це Олег Рябушенко, це Станіслав Романець, це Вадим Малий, Ілля Каменда, Олександр Долгий та увесь колектив в Одесі та області. Дякую дуже. Слава всім, хто воює, хто працює, хто рятує всіх нас заради України. Слава Україні!
And Ron
Slava.
Slava. He got me with that first Slava. I was like, oh, I was like,
Yeah,
wait a minute, it's over.
he got me jumping.
Dude, he got me reflexing over here. But with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1075 of the war. And that rounds out our news segment. It moves us on into the second segment of the stream where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, what a segment it has been tonight. We were able to raise nearly $3,100 for Nova Ukraine again this weekend. And once again, we had a massive amount of people here with us tonight. Crazily enough, we had about 11.1 thousand people here on the stream at the peak, and so far 61,000 people have watched the stream. Truly amazing to think that so many people have been watching these streams lately, and I gotta thank you all massively once again for enjoying this news tonight. I hope you all enjoyed it incredibly well, and I hope you all enjoyed the news and also some of the antics that Enforcer Matt and me have been doing on the stream tonight. It's been an absolute great deal of fun so far running the fundraiser and getting to share the news with all of y'all today. I don't know what's got me kind of stuttering and stammering today. I do not have a stammer, but maybe I do. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of developing one tonight. But with that, it's time for us to make sure to get into the remainder of the top donors tonight, also the poll that just went up, and then as many questions as we possibly can. And so, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so it's time for the highly coveted last question segment of the night. And of course, let's jump into our top donors of the night first. We had a 333 from Hal Rose. I'm assuming it's Hal Rose. It came in as anonymous, but Hal throws in the trademark 333 all the time. And I'll tell you what, I'm calling it 3 for me. No, hell no. If you're in Alabama, you know what the hell that is. It's cringy as hell. It's an attorney advertisement. But thank you very much, Hal, for the massive support of the fundraiser. And we're currently sitting at over $3,000 raised, and we are well above gold now, and I love to see it. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, it's absolutely incredible and an amazing thing, as a matter of fact, that so many people have supported this fundraiser tonight and helped out folks to continue to see that Ukraine gets aid as much as it possibly can through the LSA. It's a wonderful thing. And I got to thank you all massively so much once again for contributing tonight and being a part of seeing American and Western interests to victory in every corner of the world, wherever that may be. And so a massive thanks to you all so much once again. And Matthew, take us on into that poll. What is it about? What is it saying? And what are the folks saying about it? What are you saying about it? And what am I saying about it?
All right, so we need to cover a little bit extra news here that came out of the Middle East today. Apparently, we're hearing that according to analysts and experts, that Iran has covertly developed a nuclear-capable missile with a 2,900-kilometer range, and it puts Israel and parts of Europe within striking distance. So this is one of the big red flags we've been waiting for out of Iran, is whether or not Iran has a delivery system for a potential nuclear weapon when they finally develop one. And it sounds like they just unveiled that today, to the dismay of many. So the big question is the U.S. going to step in and strike Iran soon to put a stop to all the madness? 64% said yes, U.S. strikes are coming soon, and 22% said no, U.S. strikes are not happening. And I'll say this: Israel wants to strike Iran. The U.S. is very, very, very angry with Iran for everything it's done over the past couple of years, and it sounds like it's just a matter of time until the U.S. goes in there and teaches them a lesson. We've been saying that for at least a month now, that they're going to be going in to do that. We don't know when the timeline is on it, but it sounds like with Iran moving so quickly on their nuclear development program and the delivery systems, that could be sooner than later. But that's just my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you? And also, you might want to show them a picture of that actual missile that's been developed.
Oh, I may want to show them that. Maybe, perhaps, who are you to tell me? I'm just kidding. Let me go get it really quick. Let's see here. Gotta pass the meme. Gotta scroll on down. Gotta take a little gander, see? Gotta take a little gander. See? Where is this thing? Holy oh, it's this missile. The one with the Israeli, soldier standing by it, right?
If you scroll down, there's a better picture of what Iran released about it. I think that's the tip of one of them. The Trust missile. Trust that it'll work me, bro. But anyways, there's also another picture, by the way. Go back one more, and you'll see down there below there was one more. Yeah, scroll down. Down. Yeah, there you go. That's a picture of it right there.
This is the most blurry picture. They took this in like 240p, didn't they?
Yeah, they took it with their custom-made camera potato.
Man, I don't think there's a lot to get out of this. Like, I'm not gonna lie, this picture is so blurry, I can't really understand what we're looking at here. But you know something, Matthew, that's great? Is that this missile is called the Trust. And you know something that America historically has been pretty good at? Antitrust busting.
Yeah, not so much.
Well, not anymore, but we used to be. But anyways, what a missile. What a missile. It's got a red tip on it. It's got red stabilizers, I suppose. Those are so thick. I mean, they may as well be made out of a brick or something like that. But wow. What a missile.
Also, I just noticed, by the way, they have a microphone on the tip of this missile, like the tip is about to give an interview or something like that. Why do they have the mic that close to the front?
I don't know, man. They're about to be like, excuse me, Mr. Trust, what are you going to do? I'm going to make America shake in their boots. I'm going to bring the Israelis to heel. Inshallah. Like, it's something like that. It's going to be like, it's like,
Inshallah. I'm going to blow up on the launch pad. Inshallah.
I'm going to fail right after launch and kill all of my launch crew. Inshallah. Like, I shall do it in the name of Iran. But nevertheless, let's see. I see a lot of people not saying great things over here about this. But anyways, nevertheless, I will have to say, I think U.S. strikes are coming soon. The Iranians are begging for it at this point, doing kind of this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? But anyways, moving on from that. Well, Matthew, let's get on into them questions. I understand that we have quite a many that are fairly interesting today. So what do we got?
Yes, and it's time to jump into our live chats, the final segment of the night, of course. And we're going to jump into our Morse code decoders first here. And tonight we had the whole roster, of course. It was Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Scholes, David Millsaps, Royal Fluffiness, Arabelle Garbo, Johnny Dog, and Norm Pritchett. And they said, the Morse code says, not even Kim Jong can easily stomach the meat grinder Russia has made. Yikes. LLT, LSA.
And that's the sound of money. Y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. And I got to congratulate y'all once again, massively, for getting that Morse code message correct. Y'all have done that time and time again. And it really is amazing and impressive that so many of y'all have been continuing to get that Morse code message correct. A big congratulations to y'all once again. And with that, you know, I do see that the chat has devolved into debauchery over the Iranian missile. I saw that, Matthew, and I was like, many people have not great things to say.
People getting inspired by the missile. Oh, dear.
Man, that missile is not inspiring the ideology of the Islamic Republic. That is for sure. But anyways, moving on from that, you know something interesting, folks, that I was learning about today. I was learning about this town of Johnstown. You see this town, Matthew, of Johnstown, named after John?
Yes, it's Johnstown, right next to Daisytown.
Well, you know something that's cool? Not really cool. It was actually kind of sad. This is where the deadliest disaster in U.S. history happened.
And what type of disaster?
It was a flood.
The flood. Was that Great Flood?
No, it was the Johnstown flood, named specifically because it was just that bad. What happened? I was watching a documentary on this today. I had to share this with y'all in the question segment because it was very interesting. By the way, once again, if y'all want to know which documentary it is, it's from a channel called Part-Time Explorer. They do great work. But anyways, This is the South Fork Hunting Club Lake and Dam. And this right here is the South Fork Dam. Let me see if I can drop you down on it, or at least show it from here. So, you really can't see it. There's the South Fork Dam parking, though. So there is parking around here. And it's apparently right down here. But sadly, you really can't see the thing. Let me see if you can see it from here.
Oh, I like this greenery.
Man, this greenery is... Dude, actually, this is really pretty. This is like a very gorgeous area. But, basically, what this was, right up here, was a massive reservoir of water, which was a part of the little Panama River. And this right here, what you see right over here where the mouse cursor is, and right over here, was a massive earthenwork dam that held back the Little Panama River, the South Fork Little Panama River, and turned it into a reservoir. And in, I believe it was 1889, a major flood hit the area. The water spilled over the top of the dam, and it brought the whole dam down. And when it did, something like 20 million pounds, or I think it was like 200,000 something tons. It was a huge amount of water came flooding out of this reservoir pretty much all at once. It got built. It actually traveled all the way down to South Fork, destroyed South Fork. And then it went all the way around this bend here. The wave, by the way, at this point was already so high, it actually spilled over this area here and onto the other side. But then most of the wave wrapped its way all the way around this river, built up on this viaduct, which was like a stone viaduct that existed at the time, built up all the water again that was flooding out. And when the viaduct collapsed, it created a 65-foot tall wave of water, trees, debris, and everything else that was already in this thing. And it went all the way down the Little Panama River, straight into East Panama, and then into Johnstown, and I think it killed thousands of people. Like, it was the worst single disaster that's ever happened in the United States, and it literally wiped Johnstown and everything that was around off the map. Like, I think there's only 5 buildings that survived in Johnstown from that disaster. Let me go pull it up for y'all, the Johnstown flood. Because when
it sounds horrific, honestly. And also, when you were saying this whole thing, I was looking in the center of Johnstown, and I was thinking, that's odd. It says Bitcoin ATM right in the center of the town, which is kind of interesting. What is that?
What is that? Really? Like,
it's in the white building, or is it in the red building?
I think it's in this white building here.
It's his and hers footwear.
And there's like
they got the crypto in the footwear building.
Let's click on this. We need to know more. I don't know what.
Oh, was it just an ad or something? It's just like an ad.
I think it's like an ad or something like that.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, that's weird. But anyways, let me see here if I can show you this. Let's see, view of the lake bed from the top of the dam. I need to find you the actual damage to the town, because... Oh, yeah, here we go. Here is the town after the flood.
Oh my goodness, man. It looks like that city in Ukraine that we just looked up.
Yeah, literally wiped out. Actually, crazily enough, a lot of the towns further up north on this river, like South Fork and Mineral Point, literally were wiped off the map. Every single structure at Mineral Point was completely destroyed, to the point that there wasn't a town left by the time the wave subsided and actually, disappeared. Mineral Point was gone. Like, it was completely rebuilt afterwards.
That's freaking horrendous, really.
Yeah, and let's see. Let me see if I can actually get y'all a number on the... Oh, yeah, also, by the way, all the debris afterwards caught on fire, which only made the problem worse. There's a whole bunch of people who were caught in the wreckage of the town, then burned to death in the subsequent fire. That happened in the middle of the wave, still pretty much ravaging the town. But let me see here. Oh, yeah, this is... Let's see. This is several months after the Great Flood, so you can see this whole area of town through here that was once filled with buildings, and a decent amount of them are still kind of left, sort of, but a lot of these blocks have just been completely wiped out as well, just non-existent at this point.
Interesting. Also, by the way, when you saw that Bitcoin ad or whatever a minute ago, it made me think a moment ago when I looked at Twitter. I saw that there was a headline that the crypto market had $2 billion worth of value wiped out in just the last few hours alone. And it looks like the Mexican and also Canadian currencies crashed at the exact same time. And all the futures are in the red for the stock market tomorrow, by the way. Tomorrow's about to be crazy on that front. So I'll be curious to see when the market opens what happens with that. But that's a doozy coming up right there. Monday's about to be it's going to be what do they call that? Monday. What's the little catchphrase for Monday, by the way? It's like Manic Mondays. That's what it is. Manic Mondays. It's going to be a manic one.
thought you were talking about Garfield the cat. But also, by the way, just to give you all the actual fatality count, 2,208 people died in this flood, just killed outright from the water. Really crazy, that sort of a deal. But also, it sounds even crazier what's about to be happening tomorrow. But you told me, Matthew, that the Mexican peso has already crashed?
Yeah, and the Canadian currency as well. It looks like they've both taken a dive.
Let's see, Mexican peso to U.S. dollar. Oh.
Look at that.
Oh,
Pesos,
dang.
pesos, heading down to the floor.
Dang, what the hell happened here?
Oh, man, somebody did a little bit of a scheme on that one.
So basically, we cooked the books. What the
Looks
hell?
like game stonk.
I've never seen anything like that before. I can't even really get y'all. So let's go look at the Canadian dollar. Let's see here. Canadian dollar. Oh, well, that isn't that bad. It was really bad back here for some reason.
Yeah, that's weird. Let's took a little dive there.
Man, it took
What
two.
about what? Oh, this is the Canadian currency right here we're looking at.
Yeah, this is the Canadian dollar.
Oh, it looks like, yeah, they're taking a little bit of a bit of an issue here, honestly. What's the U.S. dollar doing?
Let's see here. U.S. dollar to, let's just check to the ruble. Well, it's not really, the Russians still aren't cooking. That's for sure. But, I don't know. There's really no way to check rather than just comparing it to other currencies. So let's just check out the yen, I suppose, and see what's going on. Well, I mean, it's kind of not been doing that great overall. I mean, there's not really that big of an effect so far, like that I'm seeing at least. Like saying a crash. Wait, hang on. What's this right here? Oh, this is just a 5 days. Like, so I guess for 5 days, dropping 1 cent, I guess they're calling that a crash. But it's kind of dropped a couple of cents over just the past few months. So it's like, is that really a crash?
Honestly, the good news is, though, like, it looks like there will be a bit of a crash tomorrow, but the good news is if you're investing, it's usually a good time to buy stuff up at a discount. Some people don't think like that, because they're like, why would I buy when it's, like, dipping low? Why would I want to do that? It could keep going low. But for most people, they know that over time it's going to go back up well beyond whatever the level was that it was at. And when it dips, usually that's typically the time that some people decide to buy, to sort of like buy that discount per se. So at least some folks that have the cash on hand will start buying the dip and getting a little bit of a return there.
I gotta say though, I'll just be completely honest. I really would like to skip the dip. You know what I mean? Like, I think I'm all right with that. Like, it's like but we'll see. We'll see, I suppose. But hey, I heard that crypto is a good market to get into these days. I heard that they came out with this. I heard that they came up with this new thing called the presidential coin, and I heard that there was some pulling the rugs that happened.
Yeah. Well, the rug industry, it's a tough industry these days. The margins are slim, and sometimes you just have to, rip that rug right out from underneath them.
Man, I don't even know how. It's like I don't know what kind of a shtick they're doing at the rug factories these days. You stand on the rug and then they pull it out from under you and you bust your head on the concrete. It's like, what type of sick people are these? But anyways.
What's funny is before they pull the rug has written on the front of the carpet or the rug. It says, this rug is for entertainment purposes only. This rug is not an investment. And when you eventually get the rug pulled out from under you, don't be crying about it. That's what literally it says on the rug. But yet people will still stand on the rug and let it get yanked on them.
Also, the rug has like embroidered into it, this rug is not a rug. Like in bold text. It's like that's exactly how it works these days, because everyone knows if you disclaim in a contract that a car is not a car and a house is not a house, then that is simply the law of the land at that point. Also, by the way, folks, you can actually sue over contracts doing things like that. Just wanted to share that with y'all, because if you buy a house and then they say this house is not a house, and you're not buying a house, you're buying a structure. And then something happens, and then they say, well, it's not a house technically by the contract. You can sue, because any court would look at that and go, it's obviously a house. It's in residential zoning. It was built as a house, and it's also being lived in as a residential space in a house. Therefore, it's a house. So you can actually sue over that kind of stuff. Just to let y'all know, because just because just to share this with y'all now, just because a contract says something and you sign it, at least in some particular instances, this isn't every instance, doesn't mean that that's the case, because there are contract laws out there that say what is and isn't shady. So someone selling you a cryptocurrency and then having in there as a clause that it's not a cryptocurrency, that doesn't work legally. You can sue over that and probably win fairly easily, and it will be recognized that that is a futures or some sort of a cryptocurrency or something like that. Just sharing some helpful advice, just in case you all need it in the future. But anyways,
Actually, you cannot sue over, like, for example, like a meme coin or something like that, unless there's like blatant, like intentional fraud or something like that. Outside of that, it's considered a risky bet, and it's just basically viewed as gambling. So if you lose everything because you sort of like halfway conned into it or something, you can only sue under like really specific circumstances. So generally, people are just screwed out of their life savings, and that's the end of it.
yeah, I honestly have a feeling though, Matthew, that one particular instance that you and me are thinking about, but we're not saying. I have a feeling you probably could sue over that because it clearly was a cryptocurrency and a future of a sort. And then they said in the contract it wasn't. And then they literally explained in the other clauses that, it was a future for the large part. It's just that they're not going to recognize it as one. It's like, that seems to me like that probably would be grounds for a suit.
Maybe. I mean, if you
Maybe.
sue in the right jurisdiction, where it's sort of favorable, depending on the political situation, you might be able to find a jury or maybe a judge or somebody that would find it to be the way you're talking about. But if you go to a non-favorable district or a jurisdiction, they might say, no, we side with the rug puller. We're going to go with his side of the story.
Yeah, I would assume so. Not legal advice or anything here. Just mulling it over and maybe giving a helpful tip. Not legal advice though. Just wanting to to speak some things out to y'all. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to some questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
Also, by the way, I don't know who did this. It said anonymous, by the way, but somebody's threw in a $200 donation
Huh?
and helped to bring
Oh
us
my
up
lord!
to $3,365 raised. We're almost getting close to almost $1,000 above the goal. So once again, that is going to a very good cause with Nova Ukraine and helping out the Ukrainians because we fundraise a ton on this channel for Ukrainian causes. And someone asked earlier, how is our total fundraising goal going? We are somewhere above 1.5 million raised. We haven't done an exact tallying of that total in a long time, so we know, generally speaking, based on the estimates, it's somewhere above 1.5. So quite a tremendous amount of money raised on the channel for Ukraine. In fact, it beats out most other channels on YouTube when it comes to fundraising. Not that it's a pissing contest, but it kind of is a little bit because that's the way the competition works. But it also helps raise more money for Ukraine. But anyways, Enforcer, would you like to weigh in before we move to our live chat question?
I would have to say, man, you hit all that dead on the nail. So get us on into them questions.
And also, big shout out to Sergeant Taz at 777 who put in a 50 as well. Almost forgot that one. It was in the spreadsheet at the bottom. I almost missed it. But thank you, Sergeant Taz, for that generosity as well. And with that, we are now moving on here to our first live chat, which goes to No Narc. Thank you very much, No Narc, for the question. They said,
man.
I think Kim. Say what?
Oh, nothing. Go ahead.
No Narc said, I think Kim Jong Un's sister will be more dangerous of a leader than Kim Jong Un. And what do you think? I would agree with you on that. Kim Jong Un's sister is going to have a lot to prove. And when a dictatorship is run like it is in North Korea, she's going to have to do a lot to prove that she is considered a strong leader in the eyes of the people. And once again, there's certain standards in North Korea which the West has kind of moved past. Like, for example, her being female in North Korea, and this is just North Korean culture, the way it works, she's going to have a little bit extra to prove. And even though ultimately whatever the Kim Jong Un dynasty says is eventually what will go, like, for example, if they put her in charge and that's the end of it, the people will have to accept that. For her to win the respect of the people completely all the way, she'll have to go overboard to really prove the point, which means basically she's going to be ultra violent. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to largely agree with that. I mean, that was an on-point analysis. I really can't add much to. I mean, he said everything I was practically going to say as well. I mean, like, damn. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on here to our next question here. Let's see, some people are talking about, is she kind of hot though? Is she kind of oogly? I don't know. I'll have to leave that up to y'all on that one. Y'all seen Kim Jong Un's sister, haven't you? Do we have a picture of that, Jamie? Jamie, can we pull that up, Jamie?
Let's see here. Let me go get Kim Jong Un's sister. Let me go get her real quick. Hang on, folks. Hang tight, everybody. Hang tight. So this is Kim Jong Un's sister.
Man, she's kind of menacing looking. I'm not gonna lie. Like, she's like, really, honestly, if there's anybody you looked at and said, she looks like she might be kind of a little bit on the rough side, this would be probably her.
Probably, maybe. So we'll see. We'll see about that. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Jeff Alley, who says, "Isn't the U.S. Navy large enough on the Pacific side to defend Taiwan?"
Not necessarily. The Chinese Navy is growing in size and capability, and moving on into the future, that disparity is going to start becoming a lot less noticeable. The Chinese Navy is going to be growing in its blue water abilities and size quite considerably. So, say in about 2 to 3 years' time, it actually would most likely require a large portion of the operable U.S. Navy to be able to deal with the People's Liberation Army Navy operating pretty much only a couple of 100 miles off of their coast. So, as far as we're concerned, no, the Western Pacific fleets would not be enough to deal with the Chinese outright. We would most likely have to pull a lot from the Atlantic to be able to deal with them. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and people are roasting the hell out of Kim Jong Un's sister. Y'all better hope you never end up in North Korea because you might be the first example that she makes someone out of. I see some people saying it looks like a little Morticia.
She looked like a Dementor. Like, good
Yeah,
lord.
man, this stuff's wilding out here in the live chat. I'm telling you what. But she does look a little psychopathic. I'm not going to lie, though. She's kind of raised in an environment that promotes things like that, so it might sort of lead to it. But she looks like she might want to take some anger out on people of some sort. Or she might have been hitting the stash in North Korea selling to other countries. But anyways, jumping into our next question here. This one goes to Philip Fixes, LSA, who said, "How long did it take for the Russian VDV to be totally wiped out?"
It really only took about the first year, and then they were practically gone by that point. They're still around, mind you. There's actually, I believe, 5 entire brigades worth of the VDV still inside of Ukraine, but it's not the VDV of old. It's not really the air assault kind of units. They're more so light infantry units these days. They were pretty much reorganized into that after the VDV lost most of their air assault capable infantry and also most of their airlift abilities at the earlier part of the war. So they're still around, but the original VDV died about a year into the war. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here is going to go to, let's see, Devo, who says, "Why do you think the Kursk bridge has not yet been destroyed? The people have been wanting to see that bridge taken down for a long time in Ukraine. So what's happened?"
So basically, Budanov says really stupid stuff when he's not supposed to. Like that thing that he did just a little while ago where he said Ukraine would cease to exist by the summertime. And then for some reason, the Ukrainian SBU went around arresting everyone who literally republished him just saying that in his own plain words. He says stupid stuff. And he said so many times that they were going to blow up the Kerch Bridge, which he should have just said, that the Russians freaked out and they actually properly defended it. So now it's impossible at this point for the Ukrainians to really pull one off and get the bridge. And I largely blame that on Budanov. So I hope that does address that well. And that was something that happened a while ago. Like, that was something that I was like, Matthew, it's a clown world that we live in these days. Because if you all know, there was like an article that went around. The Ukrainians have done like damage control on this, but like if you were there and you saw it, like it actually happened, like trust me on this. But I have a feeling we've laid out enough credibility for all of y'all that y'all can trust us on stuff like this. But Budanov actually talked to journalists in person on a recorded video and stated that he believed that if the war continued the way it was, by the midsummer of this year, Ukraine would simply just collapse and cease to exist. He quite literally said that in his own words. And when I heard that, I said, there goes Budanov. I literally said this to Matthew in the middle of the day. I was like, there goes Budanov saying his stupid shit again. And he just says whatever the hell he wants, and he doesn't even know what the hell he's talking about. And so then the next day, we start hearing that the SBU is arresting journalists who republished him saying that because they were stating that it was a misinformation campaign. So one, Budanov was dumb. Two, it was pretty stupid to go around arresting journalists who just simply literally posted what he said in his own words onto the internet. I thought that whole thing was a little bit goofy, but Budanov, I would say, is probably one of the biggest detriments to Ukraine at this point. I know, like, as far as an intelligence chief, he does not do well. I don't really think the guy does a good job, and also he says a lot of things that he's not supposed to say, and I just don't really think the guy's good. That's my honest take on him, and I would generally say that he's the reason why the Kerch Bridge has not been destroyed, because he'll sit there and say things like, "Come this spring to a theater near you, we're going to blow up the Kerch Bridge." And it's like, you're only giving the Russians, you're literally telegraphing the punch before it even comes through. And then the Russians panic, as they go, not the Kerch Bridge, because the land bridge is practically unusable at this point. So then they fortify the hell out of the Kerch, and then you can't do anything there. And that's what just annoys me. Like, it just drives me crazy. Like, honestly, if that guy was not the intelligence chief, I think that Ukraine would do a lot better in the intelligence category and use the SBU to a far more effective degree than they are right now. That would be my honest opinion on that. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. That's my 2 cents. And with that, you're on to the next one.
All right, let's see here. So this poll will be put up due to requests and popular demand. I must say, I protest this poll, but this poll will be run.
I'm not making a comment on this one.
I'm not voting. I'm refusing. I'm going to be like the people in the chat occasionally. I'm closing the poll. I don't like the poll. I did it. Look, I just did it. I was a troll. But anyways, moving on here to our next question. This one goes to Danny B. And Danny is still here. He said he couldn't shut the show off, even though he said goodnight already. So I said, let me grab his question since he's still here. Let's make it worth his while. Danny said, any updates on the mid-air collision in D.C.? What's new on it?
There hasn't really been much new. I would have to be honest with y'all. That story is really on hold for a really long time because at this point, we're really just waiting for the NTSB's conclusion to their investigation, which really is the next update in the story, and that could be months from now. So right now, we don't have any actual updates on, the crash beyond they crashed. They have recovered the wreckage, I believe, of both craft. They've recovered the helicopter and the plane, and they've also released the names of the pilots and the crew members on board the Army helicopter, but I'm a little unsure whether they released the actual list of names that were on board the commercial flight at this time yet. So I would have to say that's all we know at the moment, and we probably will only get the next major update in several months from now. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And I must first reluctantly address this poll. It says, is Kim Jong Un's sister attractive? 59% said no. A whopping 41% said yes. These poll results shall shock the world for ages. But Enforcer, what say you?
Well, we're now going to be killed by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea for putting that one up. I think it's definite at this point. But I'm going to make no comment on that. So with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
Okay, so this one here, let me try to pick for you. We got some good ones left. So let's see here. Trying to take a look. This one goes to Snowy, who says, it's insane that despite all sanctions, North Korea still could make all these weapons to give to Russia. And could Russia become a larger version of it and always remain a threat?
Yeah, not really. Because the reason why North Korea has all of those weapons, most of them are from the Cold War, is because up until about 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, North Korea was double dipping the chip and getting a load of aid from China and a load of aid from Russia, and were able to float their entire economy that way. That's when most of those weapons were being built and produced. So Russia doesn't really exist under similar circumstances. They've already used a lot of their stockpiles at this point from the Soviet era in this war. That's why they're having to pull on the North Koreans for more materials. And the Russians would not really be able to do that because there wouldn't be a country out there that would be really goofy enough at that point to support them like that. And also there probably would still be massive sanctions on conducting trade with them to where they could find some way to build up that kind of resources and stockpile them for, decades at that point. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, and this one goes to Mr. Drake 333, who says, isn't China needed to put pressure on Russia to actually force Russia to get to the peace table?
And I would have to say, can you reread that one again?
They said, isn't China needed to put pressure on Russia to actually get Russia to the peace table to negotiate?
I think maybe. For some reason, man, I got to tell you, man, my brain is not working tonight. Can you just reread the first part of who is trying to push Russia to the negotiating table?
I'll read it in its entirety. Ain't China needed to put pressure on Russia to get them to the peace negotiation?
I don't think so. I think the West can force the Russians into submission without the Chinese having to push them. I think that's putting too much undue credit to the Chinese. The Chinese really have no pull over the Russians. They're not providing military aid or support to them. They really don't have many connections to the Russians at this point in any major way in the conflict. So their ability to sway the Russians, for now at least, would be somewhat minimal in my opinion. I think we just have to force the Russians to their knees through our own means. And so with that, I hope that does address that as best as I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, so I'm scrolling through here to see which one it is. Also, I'm seeing people in the chat talking about, I can fix her. Oh my God, man, that's a dictator. But anyways, let's see. The last question of the night is going to go to. Let me scroll through here and take a look. I'm scrolling and taking a look here. Let's see. So this one is going to go to Santiago Flores. He says, check out this Mexico new interoceanic corridor railway challenges Panama Canal.
And I thank you for the suggestion, but I know what you're talking about, and I generally have to say that will not work because railways simply are not as efficient at moving massive amounts of cargo as ships, and that also requires offloading and onloading, which complicates the process and adds a lot of money to transport. That's generally why the canal was built, because there was a plan at a time to just build a railroad across Panama, but that did not work. Because let's lay out the finances of the Panama Canal. A ship in the East Coast, say New York, so in this harbor right here, it's loaded up with containers. That whole port has to be paid for and maintenance, which is fairly expensive, as well as the ship. And then once that ship gets all of those cargo containers on it, it sails from New York all the way down to Panama. It sits at the mouth of the Panama until it gets its passage license, which it pays about $250,000 for. Well, not really $250,000, probably around $180,000, but they'll pay about $180,000 for a passage license. They then move into the canal, move straight through in 11 hours to the other side, and then they're right back out, and then they sail all the way back up and to the port of LA at Long Beach, and then they unload their containers here. Now, let's complicate that process by making it the Mexican transcontinental railway, if we want to put it that way. So, the ship loads up like it did in New York. It loads up all of its cargo and all of its containers. It then sails down to Mexico. Then they have to unload all of those containers off of that ship. That costs a good amount of money. That's why they generally want to make that as small as possible, because the cargo container was made so that way you didn't have to unload and reload cargo as many times as you used to. Instead, you just move the cargo module straight from the ship to the train, from the train to the truck. And this is sort of complicating the process again back to what it used to be, because then you have to take the container, like it's some sort of a normal conventional cargo from back in the day, unload it from the ship into the port. Then from the port, it has to be transported by truck or by crane to the intermodal loading facility for the railroads. Those trains then have to be loaded up with those containers, and then they have to take the journey, which will take some time, across Mexico. Railway has to be maintained, railway crews have to be paid, all of that stuff has to be operated and function, along with that multi-billion-dollar port that would exist on the northern coast of Mexico. Then you get to the south coast of Mexico, another port of an identical kind exists. You then have to spend hours unloading that train and then moving all of the containers to a ship on the Pacific side that has the room or the ability to take on that cargo, which then takes even more time. And then that ship is finally ready, and then it transports it all the way up to LA. It's a very kind of a complex thing and adds a lot of cost to the operation. So that's generally why you would see that won't possibly really work, because it just costs too much money. Like, it costs a lot less money. This is why Panama has such a big market share. The Panama Canal has such a big market share on container ship traffic. It is just so cheap to buy the passage license through the Panama Canal than it is to transport anything by rail. Because if we really were just wanting to get it across America, why even load it on a ship? Just load them straight onto a train in New York City and then just send them straight to LA. That actually ends up being cheaper, I believe, at that point, than loading it onto a ship and then going through the really complicated process of trying to transport it across Mexico by rail for a short jaunt and then back onto a ship and back up to LA, than just sending it all straight through the United States by rail. So that generally would be my answer. Once again, I'm not an actual expert on that logistical side of things. That would be my understanding of it. Now, I could be wrong, because I actually do not know how much it would cost comparing those two options in between doing the multi-step trip through Mexico versus the single trip from New York straight to LA, probably through two different railroads, but still it's an intermodal train. So, you just hook up new power to the cars and send it on its way. No unloading or onloading needed. But anyways, let's see. It'll cost about 5 times. Let's see. So Walter the Code said, tell the enforcer it'll cost about $120 to $250 million with the Panama Canal. it will cost 5 times more in cost, and I believe he's saying to do it through Mexico. And that's really what I'm saying. And I thank you for sharing that, because it just adds so much more to the cost because of all the additional infrastructure and all the additional wasted time you're having to make that transcontinental crossing with a railroad in the most narrow area of Mexico. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Big thanks once again to all of y'all for watching tonight. We actually had about 70,000 people watch in less than 2.5 hours, and a huge thanks to all of you once again for watching. I hope you all have enjoyed greatly. And of course, if there is any news to cover, we will be seeing y'all tomorrow in the Short Wars Summary. I believe it's my day tomorrow. Maybe? Is it, Matthew?
I'm not really sure, I'll be honest with you. We'll have to do research into the matter and put a council on this.
I don't know whose day it is tomorrow. One of us will be talking to you all about the news tomorrow if there is a lot of it. And if not, we will see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 48 hours of the news from around the world. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all once again for another fantastic stream tonight. We appreciate every single one of you joining us on this Sunday fundraiser stream, raising over 3,371 smackaroos, which is well above the $2,500 goal. Thank you all once again, and also the 67,000 people that joined us on this fantastic night. Be sure to join us again on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next nightly war news stream, and also midday tomorrow for someone who will make the short war video once we put a council on that to figure out whose day it is. But with that, of course, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, get some rest, and good night.